Hello, hi. Hello, hi. What's up, people? What's happening? I'm in the building. You may notice I sound a bit raspy today. And whenever I get raspy like this, people always ask me, have you been smoking? Do you smoke cigars or something? Bruv, I don't smoke at all. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, never smoked a cigar in my life. I used to smoke the occasional Zubi way back in the days, and I mean occasional. I'm talking about I might smoke a Zubi 5 times a year, if that, right? And I'm talking them way back in the days. Um, I haven't smoked a Zubi since like 2007, something like that. Probably the last time I smoked a Zubi, and even then I was never a smoker, of any kind of smoke. I just get raspy like this when I talk a lot because I'm talking constantly on YouTube for hours and hours making videos. I'm talking constantly on Patreon, and then in real life, among my friends, I'm a motor mouth. So when I talk too much, I do end up getting raspy like this. So if you notice a change in my tone, it's not a different person. It's not my brother who I've got to come and substitute and do this for me. No, it's still me. Let me take a sip of my drink. Yeah, what's up, everybody? Who we got in the room here? Let's see. Big up Yusuf, big up Gennady, big up David, big up Aryed, big up Graham, big up G-Man Boxing, Asim, Gaylord, Afro Soul, yes, Aryed again. Big up Israel. Okay, what are people saying here? Uh, Aryed says, hi, man, hope you're doing well. Everyone in the chat too, yes. Graham Coleman, always with the MP3s. Yep, I got you. Asim, big up. Ayed says, I like the podcast on John Wayne Gacy, but glad I listened to it in the day. Some creepy shit. Yeah, man, that John Wayne Gacy shit is like demonic, isn't it? That's one thing I should have touched on actually, is the whole John Wayne Gacy case from a spiritual perspective. Because those of you who are spiritually inclined, you might not necessarily be religious. What do you think about people like John Wayne Gacy from a spiritual point of view? Do you think that he's just acting off his own natural, well, let me not say natural, but off his own warped pathology? Or do you think there's some kind of external entity that's attached itself to John Wayne Gacy? He's dead now, obviously, but do you think some external malevolent entity attached itself to John Wayne Gacy and people like him to get him to want to commit those type of crimes? I mean, the guy was a flipping monster, you know? And the next serial killer that I'm going to do a podcast on, Ed Gein, he's even more bizarre than John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was essentially an extremely violent homosexual. That's what he was. He was a serial killing homosexual who took pleasure in torturing and hurting his sexual conquests and killing them. Because after he killed the first boy, he admitted to the police that that's when he realized that death was the ultimate thrill. Killing somebody gave him a next type of rush. Crazy shit, man. And if you investigate serial killers, that's one thing you'll find out, that a lot of them have a sexual motivation for their crimes. And isn't that scary when somebody's coming for you and they want to torture you and they get a sexual thrill out of it? That's why they're so compelled, because they literally get a sexual high out of hurting and killing people. It's crazy, man. And again, is that something where there's an outside force, an outside entity, a demonic spirit, or however you want to describe it? Or is it just, a twisted human being without any outside spiritual influence? Let me know what you think, people. Israel Lucan says, what's your take on Julius Malema and his plan in South Africa? Is Julius Malema, who is Julius? Is that the current South African president or prime minister? Are you talking about the land reform in South Africa? Let me know exactly what you're referring to. If you're talking about the land reform in South Africa, I'm an advocate for land reform worldwide, just to put my cards on the table. So I believe that the land in every continent should be completely controlled by the natives. So the natives of Europe should control the land in Europe. The natives of North America should control the land there. The natives of Africa should control the land there. So on and so forth. You know. Gennady Alvarez says I'm getting John Fury vibes. Maybe I've been doing I've been doing too many John Fury impressions. Yeah. Afro Soul says Hatman eating too much African coochie. Hell no. Hell to the nizzo. We don't do that. we don't do that, bruh. Old school Caribbean man, we don't do none of that. You know, and I ain't just saying it, you know, just because it's my culture and all that. But trust me, bruh, I don't get down like that at all. Ayed says we are fighting men. Yes, real men, hard men. Proper men once brought up the hard way. Alright, what else we got here? Graham Coleman said, anyone on this app good at marketing and branding at all? Need some advice. Alright, holler at Graham. Afro Soul says, the dude tried to play John Fury and the Gypsy Gods made his voice permanent. Yeah, maybe. Maybe that's what they done to me. Jose Mourinho says, can we not talk about political shit today? Teddington Bear, my name is Jeff. Triple A says, you ever thought about doing a live chat with boxing beats and rhymes? I have actually done that before, and I think I will again, but it's a bit crowded on boxing beats and rhymes live. You know, it's just too many voices. If it was just me and Beats, yeah, or maybe me, Beats, and one other person, but when he's got like 20 people in the chat and everyone's talking over each other and there's a delay because people have got different speed internet connections and all that, it just seems a bit long. G-Man Boxing says, Hatman, have you seen the new Flight X gloves? Yes, I have. Yeah, it's their normal gloves, but they're made out of synthetic leather. Yeah. Afro Soul says, Hatman lost his voice from all the screaming he did in the AJ fight. You know what? I probably lost it because of all the videos I made after the AJ fight. Too much damn talking. Gaylord says, Hatman, have you heard of a man called Philip Garrido? Recently I've begun to suspect he was some kind of modern MK Ultra suspect. In the 70s he kidnapped a woman and put in prison for 50 years. I think I've heard the name, but I'm not so familiar with him that I know his backstory just from hearing the name. But I'm pretty sure I've heard that name. Jose Mourinho says, can we talk deeply about Anthony Joshua today because everyone is throwing him under the bus while losing and people don't support when you're not on top? You know, for me, it's not really about supporting or not supporting. It's about who's providing entertainment. That's what it's about for me. You know, I still cover David Price fights. I'm still excited to watch David Price because he entertains me. I don't care that he's not a world champion. I don't care that he's not fighting at world level. If he's entertaining, then I'm going to cover him and I'm going to be excited for his fights. So for me, again, it's not really about I'm supporting this fighter or not supporting that fighter. It's about which fighter provides me with entertainment. Yeah, some people get behind a particular fighter and no matter what he does and no matter how he fights, whether it's boring or exciting, they're just going to keep supporting him. But for me, it's about, of course, achievement matters, and if somebody is achieving a lot, even if they're doing it in a boring fashion, I have to give them a certain amount of credit. But boxing is a form of entertainment, and I want to be entertained. So for me, that's my MO. I'm all about who's entertaining me. Gaylord says, let out after 10, then kidnapped a young girl and held her captive in his garden for 18 years. Apparently his personality changed after taking LSD in the 70s. Yeah, and there was a book written by, what's the guy's name? The book is called Strange Scenes Inside the Canyon. The guy's now dead, but he was a guy who used to work for the American government. His name escapes me. Maybe somebody in the chat can remember his name. Oh, God, I've spoken about him so many times. What is his flipping name? I forget his name. But he wrote a book called Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, where he documented Laurel Canyon and how the CIA and the American government was behind the explosion of LSD use during the whole American counterculture era, where they had the hippies and flower power and free love and all that kind of business. The American government was behind LSD, and that in MK Ultra and related government programs, they were experimenting on people with LSD in their mind control programs and what have you. And that weren't me farting, by the way, people. That was the chair creaking. I need to get a new chair, actually. Okay, Jose Mourinho says, what do you think is going on in Anthony Joshua's head right now? A lot of embarrassment, a lot of anger, a lot of insecurity, wondering whether he can bounce back from this, wondering how far he can push himself, wondering if he is the real deal, or whether he's, I think there's a whole mix of emotions and a whole mix of thoughts going through Anthony Joshua's head. But Anthony Joshua was a winner at the end of the day. He didn't get as far as he did right now without having something about him. So he's a winner, and I'm sure he's going to try and come back and do the best he can. But whether he'll be successful or not, I don't know. I would feel a lot more confident in Anthony Joshua's chances of climbing back to the top of the game if he got rid of Robert McCracken. And I know this sounds counterintuitive to a lot of people, but if he didn't take the Andy Ruiz rematch, and people are saying, yeah, but he has to take it because he could get frozen out if you don't take it, because then Al Heyman will have all the belts. I don't think Al Heyman will be able to keep hold of all the belts for very long, for one. And for two, AJ's got time. He's only, what is he, 28, 29? He's got time. He's already a multi-millionaire. He's made more money than Wilder and Fury and Dylan White, all of them combined. So he's in no rush to try and make life-changing sums of money. He's already done that. So if he is more about reinventing himself as a fighter, I think he should forget about the Ruiz rematch, get rid of Robert McCracken, come down off world level and go back into the learning phase of his career, because Anthony Joshua was moved extremely quickly, extremely quickly. The Warriors Code says, my missus gets a thrill when she pulls a 20-pound note out of my wallet. Yeah. Israel Lucan says, what's your take on countries that have foreign territories till this day, such as Falklands Islands? Do you think this is a form of imperialism? Of course it is, yeah. It is. I'm not a fan of it. Gennady Alvarez says, what are your thoughts on the alcohol and drinking culture in Britain? It's unhealthy. It's, I think for a long time, it's kind of a release for British people who are more, traditionally, British people are more inhibited than, let's say, Americans or Italians or people from other parts of the Western world. British people are more inhibited in their day-to-day life, and so maybe a manifestation of those inhibitions is the binge drinking culture, where everybody gets to drink the alcohol and just release their inhibitions. So maybe it's that, but it's unhealthy, man. Consuming alcohol constantly and binge drinking, all that kind of stuff. It's bad for your body. It's bad for your mind. I've quit drinking altogether now. I never really was a massive drinker. I guess I went through certain periods in my life where I was drinking more frequently than others, but I've never been a massive fan of alcohol. I've never liked the feeling of waking up the next day when you've been drinking the night before. And I never used to get headaches, so I'm not someone who used to suffer with banging hangover headaches and all that kind of stuff. I just have this shitty feeling in my body after drinking alcohol the previous night. You know what I'm talking about? That's just feeling where you just feel shit. And the last time I had that feeling, I was like, you know what? Why am I still doing this? You know, I don't drink that frequently anyway. So, and I've had the feeling of alcohol in my system so many times over the years. The novelty has worn off. I think it wore off a very, very long time ago. But you know, socially and whatnot, you end up being at a friend's house or being at a bar or whatever and having a little drink with friends. But yeah, I haven't touched alcohol now for over a year, and I can't say I miss it. And I've been without alcohol for a couple years before, but this time I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being permanent. Especially because at my age, you know, when you get up there in age, you start thinking more about your health. So at my age, it's probably not the best idea for me to keep drinking anyway. Triple A says, would like to hear you and Beats talk one-to-one about magic and the occult. Does Beats talk about magic and the occult? Does he have knowledge of the magic and the occult? If he does, then hell yeah, we can talk about that. Ayed says, Joshua Ruiz reminds me so much of Khan Garcia. Khan was meant to face Peterson, but he failed a drug test and Garcia took his place. He knocked Khan out and also is a South American just like Ruiz. Well, Puerto Rico's actually in the Caribbean, so it's not, you know, technically not South America. But yeah, there are definitely parallels between Joshua Ruiz and Khan Garcia. Although I think Khan Garcia was more Khan underestimating Garcia. I don't think AJ underestimated Ruiz, you know. I really don't believe that. I think AJ underestimated Ruiz's powers of recovery. But if AJ underestimated Ruiz, why was he so cautious in the first couple rounds? So I don't think he underestimated him. He went in there, to me, knowing that Ruiz was dangerous and knowing that Ruiz was good at counterpunching and he had fast hands. Because that's the way he boxed for the first couple rounds. It's just that once he dropped him, he got reckless and he thought he could go in there and just finish him off. Underestimated his powers of recovery and got clipped. Abs TV, what's good, bro? What's happening? What's happening? Ayed says if you watch the Vlad knockdown of Joshua, he throws a left hook after a straight right. Because Joshua was going down, he missed. Graham Coleman says, I agree that the shot he took from Klitschko put him down would have knocked out a horse. It was a tremendous shot. It was a tremendous shot. But, you know, he took several rounds to get over the Klitschko knockdown. And Klitschko gave him that space, you know? Whereas Andy Ruiz jumped on him. Klitschko didn't really jump on him the round after. He let him off the hook. I saw Carly in here a second ago. Where's Carly? I forgot to say hi to Carly. What did she say in the chat? I've lost her here. In fact, let me put the chat big. And pop out the chat and make it big. Let me see. Okay. I think she was talking about the serial killer. Okay, yeah, there we go. Carly says, what other serial killer podcasts have you done other than John Wayne Gacy? I did Ted Bundy, and I did another one. I didn't just do Ted Bundy. He wasn't the only serial killer I did. I can't remember the other one that I did. Off the top of my head, I've forgotten. I've done at least 3 now serial killer podcasts. Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy. Who was the other guy that I did? There was somebody else. It wasn't Jeffrey Dahmer. Oh, it was David Berkowitz. David Berkowitz is the other serial killer I did, aka the son of Sam. And in the David Berkowitz case, there was definitely a lot of occult. There was a lot of occult involvement. Let me just put it that way, because David Berkowitz said he was part of a satanic cult, and the satanic cult included high-level police, judges, politicians, lawyers, doctors. That's what the son of Sam Killer, David Berkowitz, said. And he was a serial killer from New York City in the 1970s. Okay, Mark Evans says, Evening Hatman, have you ever come across the serial killers Charles Ng and Leonard Lake? I've heard of Leonard Lake. Charles Ng? No, who's Charles Ng? Asim Khan says AJ's making zero changes to his setup. I see him losing the rematch. Yeah, man. Could happen. Could happen. Graham Coleman says Fred and Rosemary West would be a good podcast if you know much about it, that is. Yeah, I want to do more investigation into Fred and Rose West, but I did mention previously that some of the victims, or many of the victims of Fred and Rose West, had a finger removed from their left hand. And in occult circles, if you are a practitioner of magic, they say that you are a member of the left hand path. So Fred and Rose West's victims having digits from the left hand removed may suggest that there's some kind of occult situation going on there. The theory behind Fred and Rose West is that, similar to Jimmy Savile, they were involved in a high-level pedophile ring, and that they were basically procurers of children for this high-level pedophile ring. And that is a reoccurring theme, because that's what many people believe Savile was, and I think the evidence for that is overwhelming. People also believe John Wayne Gacy was doing something similar, and same way with Fred and Rose West, that they may have been part of a very high-level pedo ring. And interestingly, Fred West murdered himself. Murdered himself. He committed suicide. He hung himself in prison. And some people say, this is the theory, that he was suicided, that he didn't really hang himself, but he was hung. He was killed, and they made it look like a suicide because he was about to spill the beans on much higher level people within that pedophile ring. So yeah, I'll definitely do one about Fred and Rose West. There's a lot to go into there. Jose Marino says, Hatman, you should take a look at O'Hara Davis video reacting to the AJ loss. Okay. I've seen O'Hara Davis video talking about Tyan Booth, but I haven't seen his one reacting to the AJ loss yet. Graham Coleman says the Chernobyl was a great show, brilliant work from HBO, second best show I have seen next to The Sopranos. Vader D says, Hatman, what is your reply to my opinion concerning rape and abortion, that a woman has, I think, up to 2 weeks to take a pill, so there isn't a moral excuse that a late-term abortion should be permitted, and that killing of a child, which abortion is far worse morally than the rape in the first place. Late-term abortion, specifically, I mean abortion from 1 day to a week, I'm cool with, but after 2 weeks it gets suspect to me. Well, I think you got a very good point there, Vader D. I think you got a very good point. But to be fair, if a woman has been raped, what kind of emotional state is she in? I know women who have been raped don't always report the rape immediately. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. A woman who has been raped is going to get examined, obviously. And I know they're usually examined by women, female nurses and doctors and stuff like that. But I don't know what kind of trauma they go through in that situation. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying, definitely. And I think if someone wants to get an abortion, then yeah, if they haven't been raped, should they be getting an abortion at all? And if they do, shouldn't it be within a week or something, or 2 weeks of getting pregnant? But a lot of women don't know they're pregnant until they're like a month, or when they miss their period, then they realize they're pregnant. And in fact, some women, when they get pregnant, they have a period after their initial, after they get impregnated. Sometimes a woman can actually still have a period after that. I mean, am I wrong about that? But I think that can sometimes happen. So sometimes women don't realize they're pregnant until, a month has gone by or whatever the case may be. You know how sometimes people put things to the back of their mind. The woman might be thinking, "Oh God, I could have got pregnant. Let me just block it out my mind and hope that hasn't happened." Wishful thinking. And then by the time a week elapses, 6 weeks, she can tell that something is different, and she's like, "Oh God, I think I'm pregnant." So just to play devil's advocate, I'll say that. But yeah, when you're talking about advanced stage pregnancy, it is murder. I'll have to agree with it. Vader D says anyone who advocates abortions, look up a 24-day fetus. Could you stomp on that if it was on the floor? Because that is basically what an abortion is. Vader D definitely got strong opinions on abortion, and I hear you, bro. Carly Woodbridge, hello. Gennady says, what is your opinion on Fury and the Jewish banker comments? Do you feel he was threatened and that's why he was banned for so long? Do you think that has any role to play? Well, there's a lot of powerful Jewish people in the financial sector when it comes to banking and what have you, insurance. Jewish people practice, and I'm not talking about all Jewish people, but the Jewish community in general, they practice group economics. They scratch each other's backs and stuff like that. And out of all the groups in the world who practice group economics, because there are many groups who practice it, Jewish people have been among the most effective, if not the most effective. So would a lot of them have been offended by Tyson Fury's comments? Definitely. Would those in a position to do so have tried to bring Tyson Fury down a peg or two and hurt his career in whatever way they could? I think it's very possible. So that's what I'll say about that. Kasim says, Hatman, how do you think Muhammad Ali would do against today's giant heavyweights? I think he would do well. Ali, even though he was small, he was like 6'3", 215. I think he'd do well because he could move very fast. He didn't fight heavyweights as big as today for the most part in terms of poundage, but he fought some very tall guys. Ernie Terrell was 6'6", and he fought a bunch of other tall guys. Like, how tall was Chuck Wepner? He must have been like 6'5", 6'6". Joe Bogdan was at least 6'4", 6'5". So he fought tall guys. George Foreman was 6'3 and a half, 6'4". So I think Ali would have done well. I can't say he would have beaten everybody because he didn't beat everybody in his time. But I think he would have done well with that movement, because Ali was a tremendous mover. Very fast hand speed, tremendous heart, could take a shot. I think he would have done well. Triple A says, Hatman, would like to see you hit the heavy bag like the guys on Facebook. You cover your face and record it. I've already hit the heavy bag on Facebook. Just go to my Facebook group and go to the search box in the group and type in heavy bag 6 weeks, and you'll see a video of me hitting the heavy bag from a couple years ago. Adrian, big up Adrian, man. Big up, big up, big up. Adrian says, why do you think people are fascinated by serial killers, and why are most modern ones from America? Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I have to look within before I look without. Why am I interested in serial killers? I've always been interested in the darker side of human nature, because it's like the old saying goes, people fear what they don't understand, and maybe by understanding it more we'll fear it less. Maybe that's what's going on. At least when it comes to my pathology, maybe that's what's going on, because from when I was a child I was shocked and horrified by the evil that human beings were capable of. See, I wasn't a child who saw horrible things and thought, oh wow, this is good, I like this, I want to do this to people. It was the exact opposite. I saw things and heard things that horrified me and had me awake at night not being able to go to sleep. And I guess I wanted to try and understand it so that I wouldn't fear it as much. So maybe that's what it is. Um, but when you're dealing with serial killers, at least for me, and I would hope for most of you, you're dealing with a mindset which is almost impossible to comprehend, because I could never do what these serial killers are doing. If you're talking about um, killing someone, I think most men, if they knew that they would never be caught, most men have the capacity to kill. Yeah, I'm sure that if there was no laws, a lot of you guys would have killed somebody by now. A lot of you guys would probably have a couple bodies on your record if there was no law against murder. So I think most men and maybe even some women have got the capacity to murder someone. But if you're talking about someone who gets an addiction to murder, who goes around and it's not for money, it's just a compulsion to kill with usually a sexual motive. That's something else entirely, and none of us, or I would hope none of us, can actually understand what drives these kind of people, on a deeper, like, for example, you can't put yourself into this person's shoes. It's very difficult to try and think the way they think, because it's so warped and it's so different from a normal human being. So Carly says Fred and Rose West were defo up there as the worst serial killers. I think Rose was actually the brains and worse than him. Yeah, that's what they said. Rose was a prostitute, Rose West. And weirdly enough, Fred West, from what I read and heard, Fred West used to make sex tapes where he would film his wife getting smashed by other guys. So Fred was what do they call him? A cook, a cookhold. That's what they called him now, ain't it? That's what Fred was doing. He was filming guys smashing his wife. And one of the messed up things I heard about Fred, and this was in a Fred West documentary, it was about them. Fred West used to sleep with his own daughters, and he also used to rape very young girls, and he preferred virgins. Okay, and he also took the virginity of his daughter. I can't remember how many daughters he has. He has at least one, or had. He's no longer alive. But in the documentary, they said that Fred West had a really small penis, and so he preferred virgins because they didn't realize that his penis was small. Do you know what I mean? Messed up. But yeah, Fred and Rose West were a terrible pair. I remember watching one documentary about Fred West, and they interviewed his son, and his son said that his dad used to work in a slaughterhouse, right, in an abattoir, cutting up cows and killing animals and all that kind of stuff. And Fred had a motorcycle accident at some stage in his life. And after the motorcycle accident, where he suffered apparently severe head injuries, his personality changed after the motorcycle accident. This is what they allege, because there was this theory going around for years that most serial killers have suffered some type of damage to their frontal lobe, to the frontal lobe of their brain. And this was also speculated what might have happened to Fred West when he had that motorcycle accident. So you combine the working in the abattoir with the brain damage, and I don't know, but then how would you explain the actions of his wife? Could the average man who just turns a bit funny because he's had this motorcycle accident and brain damage convince his wife to, you know, start whoring herself out and kidnapping young girls and killing them and stuff like that? How many women would go along with that? I would have to imagine not very many. But the mainstream came up with that theory to try and explain Fred West. The mainstream, one thing about the mainstream is that whenever they come up with overly simple explanations for very sinister crimes, you need to be suspicious. It's like with the Jimmy Savile thing. When they say that Jimmy Savile was basically a lone wolf and he was operating for how long? 50 years or more, raping kids and doing all kind of stuff with unprecedented access to hospitals and children's homes, and all the while he was close to Margaret Thatcher and Ted Heath and the royal family, and nobody knew what he was doing. That is the narrative that the mainstream media in the UK expects you to believe. What a crock of shit. What a crock of shit that is. Kasim says, if AJ and Ruiz fight again, do you think Ruiz should lose some weight or stay as he is? I think he should lose some weight. He's got enough time now to lose the weight the right way, not lose it too fast. So I think he should lose some weight, because I think AJ is going to move in the rematch and Ruiz is going to need some extra foot speed. So yeah. G-Man says, Hatman, my mate is thinking of taking a fight against the Venezuelan Olympian. My mate is 5-0, 4 KOs. The Olympian is a 140 pounder, but he's really a 130 pounder. He's debating whether to take it. What would you recommend? Well, I'd have to see your friend fight, to be able to say anything about that. I'd have to see him fight. Abs TV says, do you think the involvement in the occult is rampant, or is it only a very small number of the population who are involved in it, and is it getting bigger? I think it's a very small, I think it's more than 0.5%, because people in the general population are getting more interested in the occult again over the past, couple decades, with the rise of the what do they call it now? This spiritual movement. God, I forget the name of it. What is this alternative spirituality? What do they call that again? I forget what they call that. But that's been on the rise since maybe the early 90s, gradually growing and growing. And so along with that, you've had the rise of occultism again. So I think it's growing among the general population. But if you're talking about occultists who are also members of the deep state, then yeah, you're talking about a tiny fraction of the population. But among the general population, there's a lot of people, a lot of occultists. Yeah, there's still a minority for sure, but I would imagine it's more than 1%, probably a lot more than that, closer to 5-10% maybe. No higher than 10, I would imagine, but I think it's quite high. I think it's quite high, particularly when you take into account there's a lot of immigrants in the UK now, people coming from Africa and Asia and parts of the world where witchcraft and occultism is extremely prevalent. Ayed says, what do you think of stalking? Do you think people enjoy doing it, or do they not even realize how obsessed they have become? Well, I've been the victim of stalking. There was a girl who was stalking me, and she stalked me for quite a while. But with her, she was stalking me because I locked her off, basically, and she couldn't take the fact that I'd locked her off, and I didn't want to have anything to do with her anymore. So she started stalking me, and it became obsessive, and yeah, it was some weird shit. But I guess it was just an emotional thing. She couldn't emotionally let go, and the way I locked her off was quite sudden. I mean, she deserved to be locked off, because she crossed a certain line that you don't cross. And she tried to drag me down into something that you don't try to drag me down into. I've spoken of it before. She basically physically attacked me, and she did everything in her power to get me to retaliate, because she wanted me to get locked up, because that's how it is in the Western world, is if a woman physically attacks you, even though legally you have the right to defend yourself and strike back, particularly if she's attacking you with a weapon, it's still going to be in the woman's favor when it goes to court. So yeah, she tried to drag me into a situation like that, and As soon as that happened, I was like, you know what? That's it. You like, you're gone. I'm locking you off forever. And she couldn't take it. And she stalked me for a long time. In fact, I'm not even sure if I'm safe now. uh, Jose Mourinho says, have you noticed AJ uses the Team GB setup in Sheffield to train and live over there? What are your thoughts on this, considering the Team GB setup in Sheffield should only be exclusively to GB boxers? Well, that's something that Frank Warren keeps saying. But at the end of the day, they make allowances for AJ because, for one, he was very successful in the amateurs, and because he was so successful, that has boosted Team GB. You know, so maybe it's their way of giving back to AJ for what he's done for Team GB. And I don't know if AJ still invests money in the gym there in Sheffield, or does anything like that. I know uh, he bought new equipment for his old amateur gym in Finchley. So maybe AJ just has a really good relationship with the ABA, and because he helps out so much, they're willing to help him out as well. You could say, well, it's not fair because other pros don't get to go there, but maybe other pros do get to go there. I don't know. But I think the reason that Frank Warren is making such a big deal of it is because AJ's with his rival. You know, it's just that straightforward. Vader D says, Yo, Hatman, I've been wanting to get your thoughts on this for a while. Where do you stand on the 5 fruit and veg portions per day? Have you looked into carnivore and vegan diets, and what do you think of the religious dietary rules? I've mentioned before that I think people should be eating the food which is native to their native land. So whatever plants grow in your native land, and I mean the land, the land of your ethnic, where you're ethnically native, the plants that grow there, the fruits that grow there, eat those and eat them in season. The animals that live there, eat them and eat them in season. And obviously watch how much you're eating, because overeating is a big problem, particularly in developed countries. Most of us overeat. So yeah, just watch those things, and just because at the end of the day, everybody has a phenotype, and your phenotype has developed over thousands of years. um, I remember watching a program years ago on the BBC about milk, and about how milk, certain people have lactose intolerance. For example, in many parts of Africa, most people, or a very high percentage of people, are lactose intolerant because dairy farming is not very prevalent in many parts of Africa. And so the phenotype of most people doesn't process milk very well because people are not used to ingesting it. Whereas in Europe, lactose intolerance is far lower among European people than it is among many people in Africa. Again, that's an example of phenotype. So what's good for the goose is not always good for the gander. Just because a certain type of food is healthy for one person from one race, it doesn't mean it's going to be healthy for everybody else from other races. Pay attention to where you're from, you know, natively, and look at the food that naturally grows there in season. And that's what I think people should do. The whole vegan thing, it flies in the face of phenotype. Yeah? How many native tribes that have been around for thousands of years are vegans? You know what I mean? I don't know, man. I don't believe in this whole vegan thing at all. If somebody wants to be vegan, go ahead and do it. I'm not saying that we should demonize it, but I don't think it's all it's cracked up to be, because people are acting as though everybody should be vegan, and I just don't buy it. I don't think everybody is going to be at their most healthy on a vegan diet. I don't believe that at all. There's no logic to that. Yeah, if you understand what a phenotype is, there's no logic to everybody being vegan is best for them. So Mark says, was thinking about Ali the other day. It's a shame there's so much hatred towards Muslims because of terrorism, etc. look at Ali and what he stood for. These haters aren't even a fraction of the man he was. Mm. Yeah, so I've spoken about Islam so much on Patreon. Pretty much spoken to death about Islam, man, about how it's demonized and all that kind of thing. There's far more Muslims that have been killed by Western bombs than the opposite. But yeah, Ali was a hell of a guy, particularly for not just sportsmen, because Ali was responsible for pushing the purses that boxers get, but also the amount of money that professional athletes get through the roof. Because before Ali, there was nowhere near as much money in professional sport as there was, during and after Ali. So he did a hell of a lot for sport, and of course, for black people in the United States and beyond, he did a hell of a lot. He was an inspirational figure because black people in the United States were viciously oppressed. And Ali came around during the time of the civil rights movement. So he was a larger than life character who stood for far more than just, boxing. So yeah, man. Gennady says, what are your thoughts on Triple G and Banks? I thought Triple G was only in it for the money after the loss. But him bringing in Banks and focusing on head movement and speed, he seems determined to beat Canelo. Oh, he's a competitor. And he's just signed this DAZN deal. So I guess he's trying to reinvigorate himself. He's been with Abel Sanchez for a long time. Now he's left him. Changed networks. It's all new for Triple G. And when you change your situation, when you break an old routine, you are going to get an extra burst of energy when you're in a new environment. It feels new again. It makes you feel like a young fighter because everything feels fresh and new. So yeah, I've seen him on the pads with Jonathan Banks, and now he's throwing faster combinations and he's not loading up so much. It remains to be seen whether that's actually going to work for him, because his heavy-handedness is actually one of his best attributes. But now that he's trying to throw faster combos and not be so heavy-handed, will it cut down on his punching power? We'll see. Afro Soul says, I definitely would have smoked a few in the heat of the moment back in the day, in my high school days, if I could get away with it. Gennady says, do you feel Ali's Parkinson's was inflicted by the deep state to silence him? Just wondering. I've heard people say that, but look, man, people get Parkinson's syndrome from boxing. So did they have the technology back then to silence Ali by giving him Parkinson's? I don't know. Look, Ali took a hell of a lot of punishment, man. So maybe he just got it because of all the punishment he took. I mean, you look at them Frazier fights, man. The punishment he took in there was just unbelievable. So Jose Marino says, do you think AJ has too many yes men around him? Robert McCracken, I don't think is a yes man. In terms of his hanger, you see, the thing about AJ is that even though he's a celebrity, his personal circle of friends, the impression I get, is very tight knit. AJ is not really a very open person in terms of his social life. That's not the way he comes across to me anyway. He comes across as somebody who, yeah, he does these little appearances on camera where he's with the public and all this kind of stuff, but I really get the impression that AJ has quite a closed circle, which is difficult to penetrate, and within that closed circle, is it yes men? Well, it depends who's getting paid, so I don't know. It's difficult to say. If you were to analyze somebody like Anthony Yard, you could say, yeah, he's got a lot of yes men around him because the yes men are very upfront. He's got that guy who always does pads with him that's talking about lions in the camp, and then you got Tunde Ajayi who's always talking rubbish in the interviews. But with AJ, Hearn is up front, but other than Hearn, AJ's people don't really talk to the public like that, so it's hard to say if he's got too many yes men around him. It's really hard to say. Darrell Carter says Scientology. Yep, I definitely need to do an episode about Scientology. Others have brought that up as well in the past. David Gold says, Hatman, why do you think Fury can fail a drug test for PEDs and not receive the criticism of other heavyweights have received, and have it swept under the carpet like it never happened? Because he turned himself into a victim. You know, Tyson Fury is very good at that, at turning himself into a victim. And there's a lot of parallels between Tyson Fury and his namesake Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson was very good at that. Mike Tyson was very good at painting himself as a victim. And a lot of the boxing press bought it, and the Tyson fans perpetuated this idea of Mike Tyson being a victim. Even now, you go into any Mike Tyson video and the comments are just full of people saying Don King fucked him over, Robin Givens fucked him over, this person fucked him over, that person fucked him over, and there'll be nothing in there from the Tyson fans about Tyson did it to himself, Tyson needs to take responsibility. No, it's always somebody else's fault. And if it wasn't for Tyson being victimized by all these people, he would have been unbeaten, 100-0, because Kevin Rooney said it. So Tyson is actually, Teddy Atlas described Tyson as very manipulative. He said even when Tyson was a teenager, he was manipulative. And I can believe it, because Tyson was a crook. Tyson was robbing people. Tyson was committing burglaries. Tyson was doing all kinds of crooked shit when he was a teenager in Brownsville. So when he went up there to the Catskills, what, you think he weren't still crooked? Of course he was. You know, he knew how to manipulate people. He knew how to talk to people a certain way to get what he wanted. He learned that in Brooklyn, in Brownsville. So he also took that to the media, I think, to some extent, Mike Tyson. So I can believe Teddy Atlas when he said Mike Tyson was manipulative. And I see the same thing with Tyson Fury, or a similar thing, that he's quite manipulative, and he's good at turning himself into the victim. And because he's good at that, and he's very smart, Tyson Fury, very cunning, that's why he's been able to get off lightly when it comes to failing these drug tests. Yeah, because he's a very smart, manipulative individual, you know. And that's not to say that he's a horrible guy, a terrible person. No, I'm not saying Tyson Fury's terrible, but he knows how to manipulate people. That's what I'll say. He's definitely not someone who's done as many bad things as Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was a teenage tearaway, knocking out old ladies and stealing their groceries, burgling people's homes, bullying people, mugging people, and then obviously went on to, you know, be beating up all kind of different women, sexually assaulting people. And people might not believe that he actually raped Robin Givens, but Tyson himself has admitted that he took advantage of many women, and he hit women and did all kind of stuff. So, you know, and that guy still today is seen as a hero and a victim by millions. So, you know, some people just have that ability to convince people that you need to feel sorry for them. Afro Soul says it's genotype, not phenotype. No. That's two different things. Genotype is what is a genotype, and phenotype are different things. A phenotype is your physical body, which is adapted to a particular environment over a course of hundreds or thousands of years. So it's the phenotype which would, you know, be in certain parts of Africa that would make people lactose intolerant, not the genotype. They're two different things. Phenotype is the way your body adapts to a particular environment, on a particular diet, in a particular climate. That's phenotype. Genotype is something different. Phenotype is almost what comes before the genotype. That's my understanding of it. There's two different things. Ayed says vegan can be good for short term, but long term it isn't healthy. Yeah, I go along with that, man. I mean, you might get certain hermits who live in the hills somewhere in China, and the guy lives to like 150, 160 years old, eating a few herbs, but they've been living that life in the hills in China for thousands of years. So their phenotype is used to that. You, as someone from West Africa or Western Europe, you try that shit. You ain't gonna live till 150. You're probably gonna get all kind of physical ailments in the long term because your phenotype cannot, cannot extract enough nutrition from a vegan diet to be able to sustain, your physicality the way it's supposed to be. Afro Soul says phenotype is about the physical manifestation of your genotype. Being lactose intolerant has to do with your genotype, not phenotype. All right, I'll look it up, but my understanding of phenotype is, what food you've been consuming over a number, and I'm talking about your bloodline has been consuming over centuries, etc. It shapes your physical body, and your body adapts to a certain diet, to a certain climate, etc., and you end up with a particular phenotype in a certain part of the world. That's my understanding of it, but I'll double check and I'll look into it again. Afro Soul says, I'm an MD with a biochem background. You're talking rubbish on this one. All right, I'll do some research on it, but that was my understanding of it. But you know what I mean anyway. People who, whether I'm using the right word or not, people who live in a particular part of the world and are on a particular diet, you develop a certain physical structure as a result of consuming that diet and being in that environment and in that climate over the course of thousands of years, right? So your body learns to efficiently absorb the required nutrients. Do you understand? From being in that environment. So someone from, I don't know, Central Africa, the Congo, who's been, whose family have been living there and relatives have been living there for 1,000 years, if you take them out of that environment and put them on a modern vegan diet, what do you think that person is going to be healthy on a modern vegan diet? So that's my take on veganism, man. You should stick to the diet of your native land in terms of what naturally grows there, the animals that naturally live there, etc., and the climate as well, because you're going to be much more healthy in your native climate than you are in a foreign climate. Again, I remember seeing a documentary years ago where it was talking about how people from Asia, right, South Asia, suffer from certain diseases when they come to the West, when they come to Western Europe, which they do not suffer at anywhere near as high a rate back in the Indian subcontinent, because the climate is different in Britain, the food is different, etc. So they start suffering from particular types of diseases. I think heart disease was one of them in the South Asian community. They suffer with heart disease at an extremely high rate in Britain, whereas back in their native countries they don't suffer at anywhere near as high rate. Afro Soul still talking about phenotype, genotype. Cool, bro. You've done it to death. The point I'm making is what's most important here, rather than if I've got the wording wrong. Then what I'm trying to convey is that man still going on about geno and phenotype. That's cool, right? If I've got the wording wrong, that's fine. But it's the message I'm trying to convey, that being on your native, or on food which natively comes from where you're natively from, I think that that's the best way to achieve health, not this all-encompassing one-size-fits-all vegan diet. I just, people are different, physically we're different. We have different nutritional requirements. It's like with dogs, with dogs, if you own a dog and you go to the supermarket, they've got different types of dog food for different dogs, innit? if you have a specific thoroughbred type of dog, they say that it needs this food or it needs that food. But with human beings, they act as though no matter where the human being is from, we should all be on this vegan diet. Well, I think that's nonsense, man. It don't make no sense. G-Man Boxing says, Hatman, did you see Josh Kelly's fight last weekend? I don't think he has the power to keep certain fighters off him. Yeah, I did see it, and I also agree. I don't think he has enough power to fight that particular style. You know, not just to keep people off him, but fighting that style, you're going to get found out as you move up, because Prince Nassim used to fight like that, but Prince Nassim had ridiculous punching power. Josh Kelly does not have ridiculous punching power, so he's going to need to get his hands up. And actually, I think Adam Booth is in love with Josh Kelly's athleticism. You know, and Adam Booth needs to come to terms with the fact that you're going to need way more than athleticism. Adam Booth doesn't need to be so impressed by the athleticism. I think that's what one of the problems is, because he keeps saying that Josh Kelly's the most talented fighter he's ever worked with. I mean, maybe, he's very athletically gifted, but Mark says raw meat diet for dogs is the best way. Yeah. When we had a dog growing up, we tried to feed her raw meat as much as possible. Bones and stuff like that, raw meat. Yeah. The same way with cats. Because like back home, there's a lot of stray cats and stray dogs. And, in my country, we eat a lot of fish. So whenever we, would finish the fish, obviously the bones are left over. We'd always put the bones outside for the cats. And the stray cats would come in and eat the bones. Afro Soul says, honestly, it seems like the top British fighters can't hang with the top American fighters. Well, America's a much bigger country, for one. But for two, I don't really think it's true. I think because America is a very insular country, they don't pay attention to anything that happens outside of America. So because most Americans don't bother watching boxing that happens outside of America, they get this perception that every time a British person goes to America, they lose. But I don't think that that's the case, because before this current era where all these British fighters are going to America, prior to that, it was mostly Americans going to the UK, and they were mostly losing. And of course, during the Klitschko era, it was the same thing in Germany. Most people were going to Germany, and they were losing. So I just think it's a misconception, at least partially a misconception, because of the fact that America is so insular. When a Brit comes to America to fight, it's a big deal. Oh, it's the invasion of the Brits. It's like the Beatles and all this kind of business. But when Americans lose to a British fighter in Britain, like Americans ain't saying anything. Afro Soul says, Hatman, I'm a huge fan of British boxing, but the truth is 90% of the time, the top American fighters always beat the British fighters. Again, I haven't got statistics, but like I say, I think it's a bit of a misconception, because somebody just mentioned there, James DeGale went to America and he beat plenty of American fighters out there. I mean, Badou Jack is not American, by the way, he's from Sweden, but that was a draw anyway. But he beat Durrell. American fighters were coming to the UK to fight Anthony Joshua, people like Eric Molina, people like Dominic Brazil, people like Charles Martin, and they were losing. And there have been many others, American fighters, who have come to the UK and lost. But again, because America is an insular country who doesn't really, people in America don't pay attention to much of what goes on outside America. And it's a generalization, but it's true. Anybody who's been to America will notice this. If you're a British person and you go to America for any extended period of time, more than a couple of weeks or a couple months, that's one of the things that you notice, is how insular America is. You know what I mean? Americans don't know and usually don't give a shit about what's going on outside America. So, obviously America is a bigger country with more top fighters than the UK, you know. So obviously if they've got more top fighters, then the law of averages is, there's going to be more American world champions usually and most times, and it's going to be more favorable for them. But if you're talking about in terms of um, per capita, Britain I think still has more world champions per capita than America does. And in terms of who wins more often in British and American clashes per capita, maybe Britain wins more time. Because remember, Britain's only got 60 million, America's got 300 million. So, yeah, America's got a bigger talent pool, but the point I'm making is it's like Cuba, right? Cuba is a small country, but they produce an enormous amount of boxing talent in the amateurs. They might not have overall as many medals as America, but you would say that Cuba is probably a stronger um, country when it comes to boxing talent in America because per capita they produce far more medalists, if that makes sense. So the same thing for Britain. Britain is a smaller country, so obviously they're going to produce less champions and less top quality fighters, but per capita they're at least matching America, if not doing more. And again, like I said, when when American fighters were going to Britain and losing, it wasn't, Americans weren't really paying that much attention to it. They weren't paying attention when Brazil went over there, or when Charles Martin went over there, or when Eric Molina went over there. They weren't paying attention. But as soon as Brits start going to America, oh my God, the Brits come here and they all lose. It's like, what happened to the previous 4 or 5 years when Brits weren't really going there that much, and Americans were going to Britain and losing? I know nobody seemed to notice. So I think that's a lot to do with it. Is the insular nature of America, and Americans only noticing things when it happens in America. You know. Kasim says, Hatman, what sport do you think produces the best athletes? I think it's probably NFL. I think if those guys came to boxing, America would dominate the heavyweight division. Yeah, um, I think that's definitely a good point. People have been saying that for a long time. That a lot of the big guys in America just play NFL or basketball, not just NFL, but American football in general, or go into basketball. That's definitely true, man. A lot of the potential heavyweight talent is in those sports instead of in boxing. Afro Soul says Calzaghe versus Ward. Who would have won in your opinion? I think Ward would have won. I've gone over that fight a lot of times in my mind, but when I look at Calzaghe when he fought Hopkins, and I think of Ward as kind of like a younger, more athletic version of Hopkins, Calzaghe beat Hopkins, but it was a close fight. So Andre Ward being younger, being a bit more athletic, and doing a lot of the kind of same things that Hopkins does, I reckon he might be able to take it. But look, Andre Ward generally is not a guy who's going to beat the crap out of you. He's a guy who's going to beat you by inches rather than by miles in terms of scoring individual rounds. He's not a guy who goes in there and doubles your punch output, knocks you down 10 times. That's not Andre Ward. He's going to be very, very precise about what he's doing and very economical, you know. Pugilist King says Calzaghe done better against Kessler than Froch did. That's true. Emmanuel says Ward thinks he would have done the same to AJ. Well, no, he said he would have done the same in his own way. So he didn't say that he would have knocked AJ out. He said he would have done the same in terms of beating AJ, but in his own way. Yeah, I personally don't think so, but he's done a lot, Andre Ward, and maybe he's gonna come back and try and fight AJ now. You know, boxing is a funny sport, man. You never know. You might come out of retirement and think, you know what? Yeah, let me take this. Like, let's say AJ beats Ruiz in the rematch, Ward might say, okay, AJ's still vulnerable. Let me try to fight him now. Darrell Carter says, any good hip hop albums you've listened to lately? Nah, man. I haven't listened to no new hip hop albums in years. This is gonna show you how out of touch I am with modern music. I haven't listened to a hip hop album. The newest hip hop album I've listened to was Kendrick Lamar, his first album. Good Kid, Mad City. That's the last hip hop album I listened to in terms of the newest hip hop album I listened to. Other than that, I've heard tracks here and there, but I ain't listened to no album. I've had no real incentive to listen to any album. You know, I've heard a couple grime albums, like I heard Skepta's album a couple years ago, Wiley's album from a year or two ago, Devlin's album from a couple years ago. So there's some grime albums I've listened to, but in terms of hip hop albums, nah. The newest hip hop album was Good Kid, Mad City, and when did that come out? Like 10 years ago. So yeah, long time. Afro Soul says it hasn't been the same since the early 2000s. Yeah, yeah, man. The early 2000s is when Kanye came out, and I like Kanye's first couple albums. Emmanuel says, Hatman, have you seen White's comments on AJ not getting a TUE and that's why he didn't perform? Triple G said something similar too. Who knows, man? It's all speculation. So, time will tell. Because AJ's talking about having the Ruiz rematch in America. If that happens, then I guess we'll find out. Okay, BKNY says, what part of Africa is your girl from? She's from Zimbabwe. Yeah, she's from Zimbabwe. And she's like a case study for me because she's from Zimbabwe and she's from a tribe which is kind of like an offshoot of the Zulu tribe. So the language that she speaks is very similar to Zulu. But the Zulu tribe is a Bantu tribe. Okay, so they say that the Bantu people, this is what anthropologists say, Bantu people originate in, I think, West and Central Africa, and they, over the course of thousands of years, migrated south through the interior of Africa and eventually ended up spreading all the way down as far as South Africa. Bantu people look a lot different physically to the natives of South Africa, such as the Khoi and the San people. The Khoi and the San people are diminutive, they're short, they have very light skin compared to most black people. They have what some people would describe as Chinesey features, squint kind of eyes and stuff like that. And even though my girl is from a tribe which is an offshoot of the Zulu, so she's from a Bantu tribe, you can tell that she's not Bantu in terms of her ethnicity. Yeah, because as soon as I saw her, I knew she was from Southern Africa. Before I even said a word to her, I knew she was from Southern Africa just because she has that look, light skin, kind of Chinesey type eyes, round face. So obviously, when the Bantus moved into Southern Africa, they started intermixing and interbreeding with the natives there, who look very different. So she's definitely got more of the native Southern Africa, the Khoi Khoi and the San people. She's got a lot more of that in her than she has the Bantu. So she's kind of a case study for me. Yeah. Afro Soul says, being raised on 90s East Coast rap, I can't stand these new weirdos who are running the current hip hop. Yeah, man, but I can't stand them either. And that's how I realized that I'm an old man. But like I've said before, generations now are so different from the previous, and today's generation is going to be so different from the next, because this is an unprecedented time in human history. Because at no time before in human history have we had culture changing so rapidly. Normally, culture takes centuries, sometimes millennia, to change in any significant way. Yeah, you've got certain native tribes who live in the Amazon or, different parts of Asia, and they literally haven't changed their lifestyle in thousands of years. But in the developed world, particularly in the past century, we are seeing an unprecedented acceleration in terms of culture change. And I'm not sure that the human psyche can cope with it. I think that might be another reason why people are having so much mental illness and whatnot, because there's such a disconnect between the current generation and the previous one, and that generation and the one before that. This is not normal. We seem to think that this is normal, being so disconnected from the previous generation. Not at all. This is abnormal. And one of the reasons that we're so disconnected is because the culture is changing so rapidly. Yeah? If you go to some tribe in a jungle somewhere whose culture hasn't changed much in thousands of years, you're going to find that there's a much closer relationship between different generations, that the younger generation respects the older generation far more, because they look at them as a source of wisdom, a fountain of wisdom and knowledge, which they can apply to their own lives. But in this modern society, because the culture is changing so rapidly, the youngsters look at the older people and they think, you can't teach me nothing, because back in your days, you didn't have the same culture that we've got today. So you can't teach me nothing. In fact, I'm going to teach you. So the attitude is all different now. So when we're looking at the music, today's youth are not living by the same principles that we lived by when I was growing up. So it's like, it's a weird time to be alive, man. Abs TV says the internet is the biggest factor. Yes, definitely a very big factor. Afro Soul says your girl must be in the belly. She is indeed. Yeah, she is indeed. And they speak with all those weird sounds, all clicks and funny ass sounds that they use in their language. There's no, that's another thing about Southern Africa is, the language, the sounds they use in their language is completely different to any other part of Africa. They use a lot of clicks and just weird sounds that they make with their mouth that you don't hear nowhere else in Africa. Devon Sinclair says, if you could find out the truth about anything at all, what would the question you want an answer for? Okay, if I could find out about anything at all, it would be, is it just humans that run this world, or is there some kind of spiritual power, extraterrestrial power, etc., that is pulling the strings? That's the question I'd like answered. Is it humans, or is it, other kind of entities, spiritual entities? Afro Soul says, believe it or not, I dated an Ndebele chick in Slough when I came to England for my surgery rotation back in 2013. Yeah, I've dated Zimbabwean girls before, couple times before, but they were Shona. They weren't Ndebele. They were Shona. Yes, Slough. Um, isn't thingy The Office? That program, The Office, set in Slough. Afro Soul says you can never make those tongue sounds if it's not native to you. Indeed, I definitely can't, man. I've tried, and it's not happening. Emmanuel says, thoughts on the lottery? Is it fixed? Um, I think it probably is. I know that's controversial, but if I don't know for sure, obviously, but if I had to guess, I would say the lottery probably is fixed. I just can't get my head around the idea of the government giving random people the opportunity to win millions and millions without vetting them, you know? In fact, since you mentioned the Bronx, Afro Soul, there's a guy from the Bronx who I watch on YouTube. I know a lot of you other guys watch him as well. I know Abs TV is subscribed to his channel. But Hassan Campbell made a video the other day um, about Down syndrome people being indoctrinated into the gay community, into the LGBTQ community. Now they're trying to recruit Down syndrome people. Look, I don't think the majority of gay people are trying to actively recruit Down syndromes, but I do think that there are powerful people within the gay lobby who are at the forefront of culture creation, social engineering, and those kind of people will have an active hand in trying to bring, kids in, disabled people, Down syndrome people, etc. Because, to me, it's very sinister. Because what on earth would you be trying to sexualize kids for anyway? Yeah? I mean, if you had straight people having some kind of, parade where they're all half naked and they're sexualizing children, particularly in Britain, in a Western country today, you wouldn't get away with it. But somehow in the gay community, they sexualize children. These young boys at gay parades and stuff like that, twerking in front of grown men. Bro, that's disturbing. I don't care, what nobody says. That's disturbing, man. Young children, whether you are a straight person or whether you're a gay person, you shouldn't be trying to sexualize young children. They don't even know nothing about sex. They're prepubescent. What are you trying to sexualize them for? What are you trying to even teach them about sex for? It's messed up, man. It's messed up. But yeah, he did a video recently, Hassan Campbell, talking about them trying to bring in uh, Down syndrome people into the gay community. It's deep, man. Because Down syndrome people are obviously vulnerable. And I've told this story before, but my ex-girlfriend, I spoke to my ex-girlfriend, it must have been last year, and her brother is disabled. Okay, he's slightly autistic, so he's not so badly autistic that he can't function. He still goes out and he goes to socialize with his friends and he goes to restaurants and bars and stuff like that. But he's autistic and he's got a spastic arm, so one of his arms is out of commission, and he's blind in one eye, and he's got a dodgy leg. So he walks funny, he's got a spastic arm, he's got blind in one eye, and he's autistic. He had a job at a local supermarket, not a big supermarket, them small supermarkets, and he was being sexually harassed by a gay guy in there. This was going on for weeks, and this is a vulnerable person, and he was being sexually harassed by this gay man. That I mean, when my ex told me that, I was so angry. I was like, because I know her family well. I know her brother, you know, and I know how vulnerable he is and how naive and innocent he is. And you've got this gay man trying to, you know, feeling him up and stuff like that when he walked past him, grabbing his ass and telling him that he's gonna have his way with him. This is what was going on in the shop. And what made matters worse is when he reported this to his manager and he was really distressed, the manager just brushed it off. And it wasn't until another member of staff intervened, not the manager, another member of staff, I think maybe in the security, they had a look at the CCTV, and the security, another member of staff, and my ex's brother saw the CCTV of this guy, you know, feeling up his ass and stuff like that. Then they showed that to the manager, and obviously the manager had to do something then, because now you've got staff members, you've got security, and everybody's showing you this is what's going on, you know. And from what my ex told me, that guy eventually got fired. But it's so messed up, man. The man's disabled. Abs TV says Hassan Campbell, never heard of him. I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not, but if you haven't, then you need to go check out Hassan Campbell. His content is definitely up your street, Abs TV. Check out Hassan Campbell. Abs TV says, do you think Time Booth actually has issues, or is he just a troll? Both. I think both. Kasim says, "Hey man, what's your opinion on university and the massive debt that comes from it? Is it even worth it anymore?" I think it depends on the person, because a lot of the time people just go to uni because it's the done thing. They don't really have a drive, a deep, deep inner drive to want to be a doctor or a lawyer, or, you know, they don't necessarily have an aptitude for what they're seeking to gain a degree in. And if you don't have an aptitude for it, or if you're going into a field of work which is oversaturated with people anyway, then you might be wasting your time getting a degree. Back in the days when less people had degrees, I think they carried more weight. But now so many people have got degrees, and certain job sectors are so oversaturated with people looking for work that it's just not what it used to be. And in today's world, with the internet, so many people have got businesses online, trading, buying stuff from China and selling it in the UK, all kind of different deals. I mean, YouTube channels these days. Have you seen all these girls now who go on YouTube and they try on different outfits and they get millions of views? Instagram models and people like that. So the game has changed, and now it might not be best for every individual to go to university. You might find there's a better, more viable career path for you. So it all depends on the individual. Devon says, do you think black people were the most advanced race before the Ice Age or the Great Flood? Sometimes I think Planet of the Apes is some sort of subliminal message about ancient civilization, where the film portrayed black people as apes in the film, but they were the superior race and advanced white people were their slaves. Yeah, I think I've heard people talk about that before. I've definitely heard people talk about that before. But for anybody today, even in the elite, for any of them to really know what happened before the Ice Age, there would need to be some kind of non-human entity that gave them that information. Do you know what I mean? Like, how on earth would you know what happened before the Ice Age? I don't care what secret society you're part of or how elite your family is. How would you know what happened before the Ice Age? For sure. Like, in any great detail. Unless there's some kind of non-human entity that is advanced beyond our understanding, then nobody really knows for sure. People have got different theories, and maybe that's a theory that some people in the elite have. Maybe that's what was behind something like Planet of the Apes. Ayed says girls even sell nudes and stuff on Snapchat. I think guys should never do that, but fair play to the girls. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Snapchat, I'm so behind, man. Couple girls who I'd spoke to, in the past, over the past couple years. That's what they asked me. Are you on Snap? And I was like, I didn't even know what Snapchat was. I think I downloaded it once and deleted it after about 2 hours. I only got it again recently because my girl uses Snapchat. Um, And when she was using it, I saw the face swap filter, and I was like, okay, this is actually cool. So I downloaded it again and started doing them impressions with a face swap filter. But prior to recently, I really didn't know what Snapchat was all about. It's only younger people who I chat to on Facebook who started telling me, oh, girls, like scandalous girls, use Snapchat to send people nudes and stuff like that. And there's me when girls are saying, have you got Snapchat? And I weren't getting the hint. I mean, I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Okay, Mark says the only way you would know is if the evidence was frozen at a block of ice somewhere. Who knows? It may have been found. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not discounting the possibility that there is some kind of non-human entity that runs this world. I don't know. Could be. I mean, the ancient stories are full of it, isn't it? Like the Chinese Qin dynasty is said to have been started by the first, you know, Qin, the first emperor of China, who came down in a dragon, and started this Qin dynasty. And you have similar kind of stories or myths in other cultures around the world. So Abs TV says I was there before the Ice Age. For info, £10 to my PayPal. The girls get naughty on Snapchat. Yeah, apparently so, man. But I was late to that party. I didn't even know about that. I'm an old man. I don't know. I don't know about all the Snapchats and all these things. Adrian says, "Do you believe dinosaurs were real?" Well, we have to question everything because any intelligent person who looks at the world objectively and has any kind of knowledge of human nature and human behavior and governments and all that kind of stuff, you'll realize that we've been lied to about so many things that you do then have to go back and look at things like dinosaurs and say, is this even real? So I don't know enough about dinosaurs to be able to critique it deeply enough to, you know, to know whether there's any real reason to disbelieve the existence of them. I'm not just gonna watch one YouTube, couple YouTube videos and say, okay, dinosaurs didn't exist. Because a lot of people do that, right? They'll just watch a couple YouTube videos and say, okay, I'm convinced. But I need more than that. I need to hear the evidence of, from the people like the academics who say dinosaurs did exist. I understand that when you go to a museum, like a natural history museum in South Kensington, which I've been to countless times, to the Natural History Museum, when you go there, the skeletons on display are not real skeletons. Yeah, they're just molds, and you never get to see the real bones. Is that suspicious? I mean, maybe. Why don't they have a display where they keep the preserved bones, available to be seen? At least some of them, You do wonder about that. I don't know. I couldn't tell you if dinosaurs existed or not, but I'm definitely open to the possibility that it could be a scam because people have made a lot of money from the whole dinosaur bones thing. We know that. And we know that the powers that be are always trying to control the historical narrative, and they're obviously trying to control the spiritual narrative too. The term I was looking for earlier is the New Age movement. Yeah, the New Age movement, because the New Age movement is post-religious spirituality that's been on the rise for like 25-30 years, and at this point the New Age movement is like right up there. And I think the New Age movement is interconnected with things like veganism. So the powers that be are always seeking to control the historical narrative, the spiritual narrative. I mean, that's why they were fighting over, or one of the reasons why they were fighting over Jerusalem for so long, right? You had all these different factions, religious factions, fighting over that part of the world for so long because everybody wanted to control the religious narrative, the spiritual narrative. They all wanted to control it. And controlling that is essentially controlling the story of how we got here and who created us. So if dinosaurs are part of that story, who knows, maybe they're made up too. I don't know. Okay. Carly says, "How old are you, Hatman?" I'm nearly 40. Gennady says, "How does life compare in your 30s? How does life in your 30s compare to your 20s?" Well, it's different for different people, isn't it? But for me, my 30s has been way better than my 20s. Like, oh my god, my 30s has been way kinder to me than my 20s. My 20s was just stress, more stress, more stress again. Yeah, I had some good times in my 20s, but it was mostly stress, real hard work, and yeah, it weren't good, man. Overall, it depends what kind of person you are. But I am by nature a laid back individual. I like to take my time. I don't like to be rushed. And when you're that kind of person and you're, growing up in a city where life moves very fast and you got to survive on your own, because my family went back home. I didn't have, when I was in my 20s, I didn't have my family around so I could go live with them again when times got hard financially. I had to stand on my own 2 feet for most of my 20s. So it was tough times when it was hard. There was definitely good times in my 20s, 100%, but most of those good times occurred before I started working. From when I started working, yeah, it was tough, man. It was stressful. My 30s has been laid back, earning way more money, a much better lifestyle, a lot of traveling. Yeah, it's not even remotely comparable. The only thing better about my 20s than my 30s was physically, I was in my prime, but my lifestyle is way better. It's been way better in my 30s than my 20s. Way better. Carly says, "Tell us the moment that you fell in love with boxing." The moment I fell in love with boxing was when um, actually, no, me and my brothers bought, well, it wasn't really me and my, it was probably like my mom or something, but for a family member's birthday, this is an older family member, we bought a Muhammad Ali VHS documentary, and I saw this documentary, and from that moment on, I was hooked on boxing. Yeah, I was hooked on boxing. Because after, they watched it, they didn't really, need to see it again. They grew up in the Muhammad Ali era. They knew all about Ali. So eventually the tape came back to us, and I watched it, and I was just like, wow. It wasn't even boxing so much at first, it was Ali. I was just fascinated and very impressed by that man. Devon says, "Do you think our brains are like antennas and people turn into frequencies from the universe, or tune into frequencies from the universe? What are your thoughts on intuition?" Um, yeah, I know a lot of people say that our brains are like antennas. So our brain is like a receiver transmitter. So that the spirit is basically like how can I describe, like an electrical field which is connected. The body is like a receiver transmitter, like a router or something for an electrical signal to go through. And when this body expires, that electrical field just finds somewhere else to go, and that is our soul. So yeah, I'm aware of that theory, and there might be something to it, man. And I don't have concrete beliefs about the nature of this reality, because I think the most logical way to be is agnostic. So I try and be as logical as I can. If I cannot possibly know and there's not much evidence, then I'm not really going to be concrete one way or the other and say that something does or doesn't exist. because I don't want to jump out the window and start believing things when there's hardly any evidence. And I'm talking about personal evidence for me that I've witnessed, that I've looked at. Vader D says, Hatman, the remains found of dinosaurs I've read are not the bones, but they are the castings which formed over the bones over time while the bones rot away. Well, yeah, that's what a fossil is. A fossil, to my understanding anyway, is the impression that a bone leaves in the soil, which then turns into rock or whatever over the course of millions of years, and then you get a fossil. But actual bones, I don't know if actual bones have been recovered. I suspect some might have recovered. I don't know. Or perhaps a fossil is when the bones calcify, um, and eventually, yeah, they basically turn into rock themselves. I don't know. But I've watched a couple of YouTube videos and whatnot about this whole dinosaur thing, and people adamant that dinosaurs don't really exist. So I don't know, man. Unless you're in the inside and you know enough about the science, then how would you know as a layman one way or the other whether this dinosaur thing is real? We can only speculate. Afro Soul says, Hatman, do you watch Lord Jamar and Vlad TV, and what do you think of him? Yeah, I've been watching Lord Jamar and Vlad TV for years. I like Lord Jamar. Um, he keeps Vlad in check because Vlad needs to be kept in check, man. Vlad talks a whole heap of rubbish. Do I agree with everything Lord Jamar says? Definitely not. But he is the yin to Vlad's yang, you know. So Vlad needs to be kept in check, man, because that guy is just... Vlad is the deep state, you know. Like, he supports 99.9% of the social engineering agenda that the deep state pushes. That's Vlad. So he needs Jamar on there to counter that, because most of the people that Vlad brings on his platform are just dumb rappers, you know, dumb celebrities and people who don't really have any knowledge or know anything. So Jamar is one of the deeper people on there, even though I definitely disagree with him about a lot of stuff. But yeah. Mark says, Hatman, you mentioned on a podcast about an experiment with people looking through a mirrored screen on someone and they knew they were looking at them. Apparently, in the army, before someone goes PTO, for the kill, not to look at their head before moving in, as they can sense they're not alone. Okay. Okay. You know, I didn't mention this on my boxing channel because, you know, people are going to say, oh, you're making it up. But the week prior to AJ Ruiz, me and my girl were both saying something is going to happen to AJ on Saturday. And it wasn't anything really from a logical point of view. It was a feeling. Like, my girl don't know nothing about boxing. Yeah, but she was like, something's going to happen to AJ on Saturday. And I've watched loads of AJ fights with her. But she was like, nah, something is going to happen. And I felt it. It wasn't my brain. It was a feeling I had inside me. And I've never had that before any of AJ's fights before, but I just felt something is not right. And I kept asking her, what's going to happen? What's your prediction? Because even though she don't know anything about boxing, women are often very intuitive. And she has a very good boxing prediction record, by the way. My girl's got a fantastic boxing prediction record. I always ask her who's going to win fights. And I want to say at least 90% of the time she gets it right. And she doesn't even know anything about the fighters, which to me is evidence of, you know, intuition. So before the fight, I was like, what's your prediction? And she was like, God, I don't know. I feel like something's going to happen. Like, something bad is going to happen to AJ. And she was like, what's your prediction? And I was like, I think AJ's going to lose. That's what I told her. I think AJ's going to lose. I was like, either AJ's going to get dropped several times and hang on by the skin of his teeth, or he's going to lose. And the last thing I said before the fight, I was like, nah, AJ's going to lose. And I just felt it in me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I felt this guy's going to lose. So I do think we have senses beyond the five senses. I'm convinced of that. Not just through watching programs like the one you referenced a second ago, but even through personal experience and people that I've known. One person in particular, an ex-girlfriend who was definitely psychic. She didn't want to be psychic. She didn't acknowledge the fact that she was psychic. In fact, because she was a born again Christian, she felt as though being psychic was like the work of the devil. So this was not a charlatan or someone who, runs around reading people's palms and charging them a fee. She wasn't that at all. She was like a genuine psychic. Someone who had the ability but didn't even want it and didn't even want to acknowledge it. So I'm completely convinced that we have senses beyond the five senses. Afro Soul says, Hatman, any reason why your parents left the UK to go settle back home? Well, because unlike most immigrant families, because most immigrant families who come to Britain, they never intend to make it permanent. The idea is to come here and work for a little bit and then go back home. But most people end up staying, you know. Um, but my parents meant it. My parents weren't playing. My parents weren't like so many other people family where they come here, oh, we're just gonna work for a few years then go back. No, my parents meant that shit. So they worked, they stayed there for like a decade or whatever it was, decade and a bit, a decade and a half, maybe 15 years, something like that. And then they left. That was it. They weren't playing. Mark says, just remembered I didn't stay up for the fight, but on the night I had a dream Dylan White got knocked down but was fighting Ruiz. Yeah. Jose Marino says, Hatman, do your parents know you just date African girls and what's their reaction to it? Nah, I don't tell my parents nothing about who I'm dating. The only time I would tell my parents about who I'm dating is if I'm getting married. Other than that, I don't tell them nothing about it. I'm not one of these people who always brings every girlfriend to my parents. Because I used to see my brothers doing that and I was like, what the fuck are you doing that for? You know you're going to break up with this girl in 2 months and you're bringing them back to mum and dad. Like, what for? That's dumb. You know what I mean? Like, well, how does it look to mum and dad when you bring someone to meet them and then 2 months later you're breaking up and you're not talking to the girl no more? Like, it's just corny. So I've never been somebody to be bringing my girlfriends to my parents. I've never done that. If I'm gonna marry the girl, or if we had kids, I bring them to the parents. But other than that, I don't even bring no girlfriend to my parents. I'm not on social media with my family or anything like that. So I'm not having pictures up there and my mum or my dad's like, oh, who's that? Is that your new girl? I don't do none of that. Darrell Carter says, I have a feeling Rivas will beat White too. Well, in terms of the way I feel inside, I feel like White is going to beat Rivas. I don't have the same feeling inside about White Rivas as I did about AJ Ruiz. The closer we got to, and that's the thing, me and my girl, all week we were saying we need to put money down on this AJ fight, because the odds are crazy. I swear I saw on William Hill a week or so before the fight, the rounds betting, you were getting crazy odds on Ruiz to win in certain rounds. It was like some of the rounds were like 150 or 200 to 1 in certain rounds for Ruiz to win. And I showed my girl that, and she was like, no, we need to bet on this. Because you could put £12 on the fight, right? £1 in every round, and you get like £100 back or £200 back, you know? And right after Ruiz beat AJ, we just looked at each other and said, we should have fucking put the money down, man. Fuck. I saw me and my girl were literally talking about it all week. about putting money on Ruiz to win because we both had this feeling like he was gonna win. Emmanuel says some are saying AJ was the victim of witchcraft. Hey, some people are saying all kinds of stuff, man. We're never gonna know. We're never gonna know. I would just say that AJ was a victim of a nice left hook. But I just made a video, right, which I'm gonna upload tomorrow probably. But just think about this: if Andy Ruiz had the same physique as Mike Tyson, would people be thinking up all these different excuses for why AJ lost? Think about that. If Andy Ruiz looked like Mike Tyson, yeah, if he was like a Mexican Tyson in terms of his physique and all that, athletic looking, would people be so quick to say there's something wrong with AJ? It was juju, it was a panic attack, it was getting knocked out? No, they wouldn't. People would just be saying, oh, you know what, this Ruiz is a beast. You know, he's a beast. That's why AJ lost. He's a beast. But because Ruiz is a fat, he's really obese, you know, Mexican, people still can't get their head around somebody like that beating AJ. You know, there's still cognitive dissonance about it. But if Ruiz had the physique of Mike Tyson, far fewer people would be thinking, oh, there was something wrong with AJ. You know. Mark says he's definitely got his work cut out with Rivas. Dreams are mad. Hatman, are you going to do a podcast about sleep? We spend a third of our lives asleep, and our brain is more active in our sleep. Yeah, that's an interesting one, actually. That's interesting. Might have to actually do something about sleep. I hadn't really thought about that, to be fair, too deeply. Although the ex-girlfriend who I talked about earlier, the psychic one, she would get most of her psychic visions and premonitions while she was sleeping, and she would wake up, you know, and she had the most vivid dreams I've ever heard anybody having. Like, my ex would wake up and she would be able to describe the minute detail of what happened in her dream, like what kind of shoes somebody was wearing, what color, you know, tie they had on, the makeup, the nails, what the room looked like. Her dreams were so vivid, it's almost as if it weren't a dream. It's almost as if she actually lived it. And when she would have premonitions, she would wake up and it was usually a feeling that she would have, yeah, rather than predicting something specific. She would usually have a feeling. So her cousin's mum ended up dying suddenly and unexpectedly, and I was with her that day, and we were in bed, and she woke up, and I was already awake. I think I was like, I don't know, you know, looking on browsing on my phone or looking at YouTube or something, and she woke up like suddenly, and she was like just in a state of shock, and I was like, what's wrong? And I won't say his name, but her cousin, she was like, his mum, something's wrong with his mum. And then I was like, are you sure? And she's like, I just got a feeling that something's wrong with his mum. And about 15 minutes later, she gets a call from her cousin, and her cousin, who's a grown man, was crying on the phone. His mum had just died. Do you know what I mean? I was there. I fucking witnessed it. I was with them. And she fucking knew that the mum, something had happened to the mum. Yeah, this was a sudden death. It wasn't something where she was like, you know, on life support or anything. This was a sudden death. And she knew it. You know what I mean? Without being told, she knew it. She felt it before it happened, and she did similar kind of things on many occasions, and it happened so often. I was like, fucking hell, this girl is psychic. this, this girl knows shit. And she hated me calling her psychic. She hated that. As a Christian, she felt like all that stuff was the devil, you know? Afro Soul says, I know you said you're approaching 40 with no kids. I'm also in my early 30s with no kids. But I low key feel the pressure to have some soon because my friends my age already got kids. Well, as you're African, you're going to feel a lot more pressure, you know. But Caribbean people are more westernized than African people. So because we're more westernized, we don't really feel that kind of pressure. Because I got friends close to my age also that don't have kids. I've got how many friends close to my age? In terms of my inner circle, I got three friends with kids, and one, two, three, and I'm talking about the people in my inner circle who are close to my age, in their mid to late 30s. I got three of them have kids and three of them don't have kids. So yeah, there's plenty of people in my inner circle that ain't got kids, and they're all the Caribbean ones. Funny enough, right? Birds of a feather flock together. So most of my close friends, or at least half of my close friends, are similar to me in a way, whereby they're reaching, mid 30s, late 30s, and they ain't got no kids, and they're Caribbeans. So I don't really feel any pressure to have kids or anything like that. Nothing. I mean, I got brothers, and my brothers, a few of my brothers have got kids. So it's not like I've got parents who are saying, when are you gonna have kids and we want grandkids? There's none of that. So I'm cool, man. If I never had kids, it wouldn't really bother me. I mean, for vanity's sake, it would be nice, but I don't want to have kids for the sake of having them. And the world is so messed up now, and the direction it's going is so dark. I start having that conversation with myself, like, do I want to bring kids into this into this shit? Like, I don't know, man. What am I bringing them into? Emmanuel says, how come Caribbean men are so against oral sex? To be honest, I don't know, but it's just something that I've never. It is a cultural thing in the Caribbean, particularly in places like Jamaica. But obviously, there's a lot of undercover guys who still do it. But me, seriously, I've never wanted to do that in my life. Like, never wanted to do that ever. Henry Atkins says, yes, Hatman, hope things are well. Speaking of physics, have you ever had your tarot cards read? Also, have you done research on star signs and how they relate to our personalities? Tarot cards, no. Star signs, yes. I never believed in horoscopes and all that kind of stuff until a couple years ago when I came across a young lady who was into astrology, and she did my natal chart reading. And once she did that, it was so fucking accurate. And this is a young lady who I just met. So she really knew nothing about me. She didn't know nothing about my personality, nothing about me. But she did this natal chart reading, and it was so accurate in terms of describing my personality. There is just no way on earth that could be a coincidence, because I was somebody who was so dismissive of astrology for most of my life. Because you read the Metro newspaper and it's got the little horoscope section, and each horoscope is so generic it could apply to anybody. So Cancer could apply to Libra, Libra could apply to Sagittarius, Sagittarius could apply to Aquarius. Do you understand? Like, it's so generic. Like, I thought, that's what a load of rubbish. But when I came across a person who actually is deeply into that stuff, and they did the natal chart reading and told me a whole heap of things about my personality that you couldn't possibly know unless you'd known me for a long time, that's when I realized there's something to this. Yeah, there's definitely, I'm totally convinced that there's something to astrology. Completely convinced. Afro Soul says, so what, you're saying you've never went down on a woman and every chick you've been with is okay with that? I am saying I've never gone down on a woman, and is every chick okay with that? Well, let me introduce you to my attitude, right? I don't give a shit what women are okay with who are with me. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. And I'm not saying that everybody is supposed to be like that, but that's how I am. I've never given a shit. Um, when I'm with a woman, she's with me on my terms. She doesn't dictate nothing to me. I've been like that way. I've been that way my whole life. Yeah. The person I'm with, she can only tell me to do what I already wanted to do anyway. She's never going to be able to tell me to do anything or lift a finger in any which way that I didn't already want to do it. So I'm a naturally generous person and I'm a naturally considerate person. Yeah. So being generous and buying people things and helping people, that's natural to me. I do that to everybody in my circle. Yeah. If people need helping out and you're my friend, I'm gonna help you. Shit, you don't even have to ask for help. I'll As soon as I see you need help, I'm gonna help you. You understand? And if the girl is with me and she's good to me and she's, doing what she does, I'm gonna buy her stuff. Do you know what I mean? I'm gonna make sure she's good. I'm gonna give her compliments. I'm gonna encourage her and be nice to her. That's me naturally. That you don't have to ask for that. That I don't feel like I'm duty bound. I don't feel like I have to do that. That makes me feel good to give her compliments and buy her stuff and help her out and all that kind of business. But in terms of like a woman making demands of me or me feeling like I have pressure on me to do this or that for the woman, including sexual things, I feel zero pressure. For a woman, it's about me. It's about my journey. Yeah, that's gonna sound selfish, but that's how I am. That's old school. That's how my dad is. That's how I was raised by my dad. That it's about me, and the woman is coming on my journey. It's not the other way around. And when you're coming on my journey, it's my rules. You get me? And it's ultimately all about me. It's ultimately all about me. I will reward you for assisting me on my journey. But this is not your journey. You're coming on my journey. It's my boat that we're sailing. I'm the captain of this ship, you know, and that's how it is. So if women are not cool with not going down it, well, for one, in a Caribbean community, obviously when I was dating Caribbean girls, they know that a lot of guys in the Caribbean community don't do it anyway. You understand? So it didn't really make much of a difference there. And since I started dating African girls, like traditional African girls, they are not so preoccupied with, sex as a lot of westernized black girls are. Not that they don't like sex and not that they don't like all kind of freaky shit, but they're not as preoccupied with it. Do you understand? Like a westernized girl, whether she's black or whatever she is, white, Asian, they get sucked into this obsession with sex all the time, where you're supposed to be doing this in the bedroom and you're supposed to be doing that and you're supposed to be doing the other, and this idea that the relationship is supposed to revolve around sex. Whereas a lot of girls from traditional cultures, they think that the family is supposed to they think that the relationship is supposed to revolve around family. They're supposed to revolve around, gender roles and stuff like that. They don't see sex as being as important and as essential as more westernized girls do. You understand? So that's what I'll say about that. Adrian Remedy says Michael Douglas got sick from it. It's dangerous. Facts. Michael Douglas said he got throat cancer from going down on women. Yeah. Michael Douglas been a bowcat from day and now he's paying the price. And I swear I did see some like mainstream media article where they said that you can get, you know, ill or you can get some kind of problems, health problems from like constantly going down on women. Mm. Emmanuel says, are they against receiving oral sex too? What, Caribbean men? Nah, just giving it. Um, Afro Soul says, I was born in Africa where the remains the same from Jan to December, so fuck your horoscopes. Americans be so crazy about that shit. Listen, I'm a logical person, and I did not believe about nothing about horoscopes for the longest until I came across somebody who did my natal chart reading, and I'm a very objective person. Do you understand? I see myself for the way I really am. A lot of people can't. I mean, I'm talking about even people within my own family. They're not able to really look at themselves for what they really are in terms of their personality and stuff like that. I'm someone who's a lot more. I'm not an introverted person, but I'm a person who's always self-analyzing, obsessively self-analyzing in terms of my psychology, my pathology, and all that. For many years, I've been like this, and so I know myself in terms of my ways and my traits better than most people know themselves. And when this girl told me, when she did the natal chart reading, I was like, I was shaken. You would never have known any of that unless you knew me. Do you understand? It's crazy. So I'm totally convinced by the whole astrology thing. That there's definitely something to it. I don't know how accurate you can be in terms of what you can predict using astrology, horoscopes and all that, but there's definitely something to it. I'm totally convinced. If other people ain't convinced, hey, you ain't convinced. But me personally, I'm completely convinced. Emmanuel says, Hatman, does not being close to nephews make you a bad human? Are you close to yours? Um, well, most of my family live on the other side of the world, so no, I'm not really close to them. I'm cool with them when I see them, but I'm not really close to them now. I mean, if they need anything, my brothers can reach out to me and I'll definitely help. But I can't say I'm close to them. They're not that old, to be fair. They're just kids. Devon Sinclair says, when did you start doing all the research about the stuff you talk about in your podcast? You said you've always been a deep thinker, but were you this informed in your 20s? Well, I definitely wasn't this informed in my 20s, but yeah, I've always been a deep thinker. Like, for example, Wu-Tang were a group that I was very interested in. I was a big fan of the Wu-Tang, and I was more, you see, you had certain Wu-Tang fans who preferred certain rappers in the Wu-Tang. Like, for example, there were certain people where Method Man was their favorite. Other people where Ghostface and Raekwon was their favorite. For me, the Genius was always my favorite. The Genius, because he was the deepest and the smartest guy in terms of the stuff he was talking about. So the Genius in the Wu-Tang was always my favorite rapper. And also Killer Priest, who was not an original member of the Wu-Tang, but he was like an affiliate or an associate. Killer Priest, I also liked Killer Priest. And if you listen to what Killer Priest was rapping about back in the days and the Genius was rapping about, then there you have it right there. So from when I was a teenager, listening to them rap, my mind was already on that path of going down, learning about occult things and thinking outside the box and understanding that there's more than meets the eye in this world. Emmanuel says, oh no, okay, oh yeah. Adrian says, a friend of mine was telling me about the Saturn cycle recently. Very interesting stuff, but I haven't got into researching it yet. Elliot says, Michael Douglas is hilarious. Abs says, what if a girl said she won't give you head if you don't do it back? What would your response be? Well, I guess nothing's happening then. Do you know what I mean? Guess nothing's happening, you know? I don't give a shit how pretty a girl is. I ain't doing nothing. I'm doing what I want to do. I don't give a shit what she wants. I don't care. I don't give a shit. You know, let me tell you something, right? I have never, ever, and I still do never try to sexually satisfy any woman. I never try and do that. The women that I end up sexually satisfying, this is going to sound crazy, but it's by accident. Because that's not my intention. It's all about me. I'm telling you, it's all about me, bro. I don't give a damn about none of that. I'm in it for me. For me, sex is a selfish endeavor, and it's all focused on me and what I want. And if a girl likes going along with that, with me getting my kicks, then it's all good. Because some girls like a man who is all about himself. Do you understand? And if she enjoys it too, good for her. But that's not my focus. My focus is me. Jose Marino says, can you answer my question, please? Sorry, let me scroll up and see your question. Whereabouts in Southeast can I meet girls born in Africa? Because nowadays it's rare. Really? Have you been to Thornton Heath? You know, Thornton Heath, Croydon. Thornton Heath is full of freshies, man. All Croydon round there, it's all full of freshies. Peckham. Yeah. Afro Soul says, statistically, you were just one example. You can't let her sway you with that. I mean, was she able to do the same with other people? Henry says, yeah, same, man. It was crazy how accurate the person was that read my star sign. Exactly. And as far as can she do the same with other people? Yes, Afro Soul, she can. Yeah. And Henry Atkins talking. See, you have to understand. I was a dyed-in-the-wool atheist through most of my life. Through my teenage years and my 20s, I was like, there is no God, there is no spirit, it's all bullshit. Horoscopes is all bullshit, that's all nonsense. I was somebody who was watching all the scientists on the television and reading the scientific literature and all. I was fully into all that. It was through life experience which showed me otherwise that I came to realize that, you know what, there's more than meets the eye. None of the psychics that they have on television, or the magicians like the Darren Browns, Uri Geller, David Blaine, none of those people ever made me think that there was anything, you know, legitimate to what they were doing. I always thought that Darren Brown and David Blaine and all them people there were just con men. Uri Geller, none of them ever convinced me. It was only through real life experience with me interacting with another person, that's when I was convinced. Not through nothing I saw on television or any of that shit. Devon Sinclair says, what you know and think about Immortal Technique and Jedi Mind Tricks, Vinny Paz? Well, Jedi Mind Tricks and Vinny Paz I don't know much about. I've heard of him, but I don't know much about. Immortal Technique I used to really like when he first came out, but he's gone a little bit too far to the left. I mean, he was always left, right? Always left wing Immortal Technique, but he's gone so far left now that I've kind of like, you know, it's kind of lost touch with him now because he's just gone so far left, trying to turn himself into the modern day Che Guevara, you know. But I did like his early stuff, all the classic Immortal Technique, Street Tales, and yeah, I used to like Immortal Technique's early stuff, and he's still doing his thing. BKNY says, do you think Genius was deeper than Nas? I would say Genius was more intellectual than Nas. So yeah, um, more intellectual. I would say Killer Priest is deeper than Nas. Don't know. I don't know if Genius is deeper, but Genius is definitely more intellectual. But Killer Priest is way deeper than Nas. Nas to me ain't that deep. Because of the people I was listening to was way beyond Nas. Nas is like deep to the average like street dude. But to me, he was never really that deep. I've never really a massive fan of Nas, to be honest. Never really a massive fan. I thought he was cool. You know, not saying he's shit, but I was never really a big Nas guy. Emmanuel says, Hatman, you got any inside info on AJ's dad versus Hearn? Nope, no inside info. Wish I did, because it is quite interesting. Ayed says, it's all about me. I nearly woke up, my parents laughing at that. Yeah, it's all about me, bro. It's all about me. I've never given a shit about trying to please any woman, man. It's not about her, it's about me. It's about me, bruv. It's about her coming on my journey. I'm not on her journey. This is my ship. This is my boat. Yeah, if she don't like it on my boat, we'll jump on another boat. I'll get somebody else on board. So understand, when you step onto my boat, it's my rules. I'm the captain of this ship. And it's my way or the highway. And that's just how it goes. Jose Marino says, Hatman, this may sound corny, but what advice would you give to virgins who feel the pressure of having sex? You might want to try and find some religious friends. Even if you're not religious yourself, you might. I know it's going to be different. If you're not religious and you start hanging around with religious people, they're obviously going to try and convert you, and you might not want that. But among religious people, you're going to find far less pressure to have sex. And in fact, they see it as a good thing to abstain, right? Because they don't believe in sex before marriage. So that's what I'd say. You might want to start finding some religious friends, you know? Go hang around some Christian groups or something. And yeah. Devon Sinclair says, I recently got sacked from Man United. Jose Mourinho, okay. Eminem overrated lyrically, says Emmanuel. Music is very subjective, so it depends what kind of lyrics you're into. You know, depends what kind of lyrics you're into. Afro Soul says Ghostface is the best Wu member, no debate. No, there's plenty of debate. You know, it all comes down to what you prefer. But nah, I like Ghostface. Ghostface had the most longevity, and who would have thought that? You know, when Wu-Tang first came out, you wouldn't have thought that Ghostface would have had the most longevity. But he did. Ghostface stayed relevant for way longer than all the other Wu-Tang members. This is interesting, isn't it? Ghostface was always like the most fiery of all the Wu-Tang members. He's a very fiery character. BKNY says, Hatman, check out Ghetto Prisoners by Nas. Abs TV says, Hatman, can you explain right wing, left wing, Republican, Democrat? Well, in the traditional sense, right? Left wing is, because the definition of left wing and right wing has changed in the minds of people, because today left wing is associated with what? It's associated with like liberalism, yeah? But other people would associate left wing with the more traditional left, which is socialism, communism, big government, a very structured, rigid version of society where the state takes an increasing amount of control over the fine detail of your everyday lives. Okay, this is definitely, you know, in the early part of the 20th century, what you would call left wing. Communism is the ultimate expression of extreme left, right? Or certainly hard left. The right wing is more about smaller government, or certainly conservative. Like in the UK, traditionally the Conservatives have been about smaller government, lower taxes, but less welfare state, you know, a smaller welfare state. The right wing is more sympathetic to the law of the jungle in a certain sense, because the right wing is like, we're not really trying to mold society. We're just trying to, the way that the right wing thinks about it is, we're trying to let the cream rise to the top by itself without forcing things to happen. Do you understand? This is why on the right, with like the conservatives, they don't believe in giving people handouts. This is the philosophy of the right. They don't believe, they believe that people are going to end up where they're going to end up. Some people are going to end up rich, other people are going to end up poor, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Whereas the left is more about trying to close the gap between rich and poor and have, everybody on a more even playing field. So that's essentially what you're talking about when it comes to left and right. But like I say, the definitions of left and right change all the time, because today when you think left wing, you don't think about Bolshevik communists. You think about gay rights and transgenders and feminism. This is what you think about in the modern context when you come to left wing. But in the early part of the 20th century, left wing was very different. It was more like communism, and that was very anti-gay. That was very anti-feminist. So Abs TV says, would you say you're more right wing? Yeah, I'd say so. But I don't like putting myself in these categories, because there's a lot of connotations and a lot of baggage that comes with using these political labels, saying you're right wing or left wing. I'm not. Yeah, I don't like calling myself no right wing or left wing or anything like that. Because if you say you're right wing, people immediately think, okay, well, you must be racist. If you say you're right wing, people immediately think you've got no heart and you don't care for people and stuff like that, which is the total opposite of me. So what I always tell people is that I'm socially conservative. Socially conservative is different than politically conservative, because there are some people who vote Labour who are traditionally on the left that are socially conservative, but politically they're more Labour. They're more liberal. Okay, Jose Marino says, Atman, no offense, I don't know how you can date a girl without a big bum. Celebs like Drake and AJ are into BBW. You don't know how I can't? Well, I always do date girls with big bums, man. The stereotypical, um, the stereotypical black man. From when I was young, I always liked girls with big bums. Genetically predisposed. Afro Soul says, I call a lot of bullshit when it comes to Hatman and women. No offense, bro, but I think you're projecting. Because I've got no reason to try and, act a tough guy or anything like that. I would happily have my girl come on here. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to have my girl come on here and she will tell you herself. I do not bullshit. You might cater to women and you might go down on them and they might be able to put pressure on you and get you to do whatever they want. No girl has ever been able to, do anything with me or get me to do anything. That's the way that I was raised, bro. That's how I was raised. And that's how I am. I'm my father's son. My dad, I remember my mom telling me, see, my dad's even more hardcore than me. Um, Afro Soul says, my dude, you talk too tough whenever we go. I'm not even talking tough. I'm just talking real. I'm talking real, bro. This is how I am. That's just how I've lived my life. All my life is I've been like this with women. And my dad is even more hardcore than me. Like my dad, I remember my mom telling me that when she first met my dad, he promised her the sun, moon, and the stars, right? He sweet talked her. And obviously, my parents are, in the Caribbean and whatnot. And my mom liked fishing, you understand? Obviously, you're talking about Caribbean people. She liked fishing. And my dad was like, if you marry me, I'll take you fishing every day. Every weekend, I'm going to take you fishing. My mom said that when she married my dad, he never took her fishing once in decades. And like this is gonna sound deep to a lot of you people, all right? Particularly if you don't have parents of this particular generation. But my mom told me, she told me this about, I knew it anyway, but she told me this maybe like 7 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. And my parents are still married. They've been married for how many decades? She told me, your dad has never told me that he loves me, ever. And when my mom told me that, in my head I was like, my dad is a fucking G. Oh my gosh, he is a G. So yeah, that's how I was raised. My dad is a very hardcore man. He's uncompromising when it comes to women. And that's how I was raised, bro. I was raised by that kind of man. I'm not as hardcore as my dad because my dad is just a hardcore guy with women. With my mom the whole time, he's the boss, and that's the end of it. Um, I'm not quite as deep as my dad, but the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. You know what I mean? It didn't fall too far from the tree. Afro Soul says, Hatman, that's because your mom is from those days. It's the same shit with my parents. That shit just don't fly with today's women. Well, sometimes when you put a certain energy out, you attract people. You attract the kind of people that are gonna suit you when you put that energy out there. Like for example, a lot of guys are going around cheating on their girlfriends. But if you meet a girl in the first place and say, look, you're not the only one. I'm going to have you and a couple other girls. And if you cheat, you're out of here. But I'm going to have these other girls. I'm telling you now, certain type of men can have that situation where they don't have to cheat, but they've got like 3 girlfriends. And those girlfriends, I'm not saying they're always loyal, but a lot of the time they'll stay loyal. Certain men have got that kind of ability. You understand what I'm telling you? Because they're going to be talented in some way. Whether they're talented sexually or they got money or they just got mind control over people. But they put that energy out there like, this is what I want. I'm the fucking boss. These are my rules. And it's either my way or the highway. And they end up with these girls who have that. Yeah? Facts. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily me. I prefer to just be with one girl. I can't handle the situation of having multiple different girls, and it gets stressful. Um, but I've always been somebody where it's just my way or the highway, and that's just how it is. And I don't care. That's the thing as well. When you care about what a woman does, that's when she's gonna have power over you. You see, Afro, so you're talking about it doesn't fly with today's women. I don't care if it don't fly with today's women. That's their business. When you don't care whether a woman stays or leaves, she's gonna feel like she needs to stay more often than not. You understand? When you make her feel like you don't want her to leave and you're desperate to keep her, that's when she's gonna start, using that against you. So I don't give a fuck if the woman wants to leave. If she don't like my way and my rules, find someone else. I don't give a fuck. This is my journey. It's not about the woman journey. It's my journey. And that's how it goes. Afro Soul says, I can see how that shit works with the demographic of women you deal with. That shit just don't fly with the inner city chicks born and raised in the Western world. That's why I don't deal with them. You know what I mean? That's why I've been dealing with African freshy women for like what, over a decade now. They're the women I deal with. Obviously there have been a few, westernized black girls thrown in there who I haven't really had proper relationships with, but I've just had little, flings with or whatever. But in terms of proper relationships, it's been with born and raised African girls for over a decade now. Devon Sinclair says, "Did your dad ever tell you, say that he loves you?" Yes, my dad has told me that he loves me very few times, but he has told me, you know, which is interesting, isn't it? Because he will tell his kids, but he won't tell the wife, because that's game. Do you understand what I'm telling you? That's game. My dad understands how to control the wife. Like psychologically, he understands how the game run. If you make a woman feel like you need her, that's when she's like, okay, I got him. Now I can take liberties. So my dad, I grew up in a household where my dad is the boss. You understand? My mom ain't the boss. My dad's the fucking boss. When anybody needed anything growing up, we didn't go to my mom. We went to my dad. My dad is the guy, man. Afro Soul says, so your pops never told your mom, but he told yo that, yeah, cold heart. Listen, my dad is from the old school generation, and that's just how they stay. You know, that's just how they stay, man. Uncompromising. Yeah, uncompromising. And like I say, the westernized black girls that I've dealt with, especially the young ones now, right? The ones in their 20s now, they ain't trying to cook or clean or, be a traditional woman. But when you show that girl that you don't give a fuck about what she wants and you don't care about her going, leaving and going off, I'm telling you now, a lot of them will come back, and they'll keep coming back, and they'll keep coming back, and they'll keep coming back, because they can't understand why I am not besotted with them. They can't understand it. They can't understand, especially the pretty girl who will come across me, and I deal with her for a little bit, and then she catches an attitude and goes off. Well, bitch, I ain't gonna call you. In fact, you have to go above and beyond for me to even want to chat to you again if you're catching an attitude. Yeah? And that blows some of their minds. They can't understand it because they're used to all these simps who go chasing after them and this, that, and the. I don't give a fuck, man. Go. It's like the girl who stalked me that I was talking about earlier. I locked her off like that. The first time she flipped out on me, I'm out of there. I'm gone. And that girl stalked me and DM'd me and emailed me, fucking phoned me and came around the house, and oh my god, this shit was going on for like a year. And she was a British born Jamaican girl, and she was just at the time she was like 27, something like that. 27, 28. She stalked me for like a year, man. It was deep. Yeah, she emailed me. Real talk. She emailed me. Like, she contacted me in ways where people don't even normally contact me. Like, nobody emails me. Well, people Gmail me sometimes because of the boxing stuff, because they see my Gmail account on my YouTube channel, so they Gmail me. But in terms of my Hotmail, nobody emails my Hotmail other than when I buy something online and I get the receipt back. Like, no human being that I've met in real life emails my Hotmail. But this girl was like in my Hotmail and shit, and in my Skype, fucking man, all over. She was, and she even got her cousin, who I don't know, who's quite pretty. She got her cousin to contact me. Do you know what I mean? One of them ones, the honey trap. So she got her cousin to try to speech me and draw me in, and then try jump out the bushes like, yo, I'm here. Oh shit. It says, Hatman, ever recommend to a friend that he should end the relationship he was in? Um, I haven't, and maybe I should feel a little bit ashamed, but then again, maybe not. But I don't really like getting involved in friends' relationships and stuff like that. I just let them do what they're doing, you know. But there was an incident many years ago, which I think I spoke about maybe in Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer or something like that. But many years ago, I must have been in my late teens or early 20s. One of my friend's girlfriend at the time, she came on to me, and not only did she come on to me, but she came on to one of my other friends. So there was three of us that used to hang around together, and one of those friends, his girl came on to me and the other guy on separate occasions. She came on to him first, right? Because he was just more sociable and whatever. If he would see her out somewhere, he would spend time chatting and stuff like that. But I've always been the kind of person where I don't talk to my friends' girlfriends much. Do you understand? Like that's just how I am. I'm a socially conservative person. So if I see my man's girlfriend, I might say hi, but I won't really stop and start up a conversation and this that. I'll just say hi and bye. But he was more sociable and whatnot with the other friend's girl, and during the course of him just being friendly and stuff like that, she came on to him like a few times, and then after that, he started acting funny towards the girl, and I didn't know because he didn't tell me at first. So whenever the girl was around, he wouldn't speak to her, and he was just being funny with her in it. And whenever the other friend was away with his girlfriend, you know, I could just sense even after a while that he didn't like the girl for some reason. And eventually he told me, he was like, yeah, she tried to come on to me, innit? And I was like, raw, is it? That's fucked up. He's like, I want to tell him, but he's proper in love with her, innit? So if I tell him, he's probably gonna like blame me. Do you know what I mean? And me and them two boys, we've been friends from school, from secondary school, so we're all tight. And he's like, nah, I can't even tell him, because he's proper in love with that girl. And then after that is when she came on to me when I was working as a bouncer. You understand? And I was like, fucking hell, this is deep. And I can't lie, I didn't tell him, and neither did he. Like neither of us told him, because this boy was so in love with that girl. Like, a man has pride at the end of the day. So if you tell him, he might look at you differently, especially when you're young like that, in your late teens and early 20s. And the main thing is that me and the other friend, we were proper gallises back in them days. You understand? We was getting all the girls. And this third friend, he weren't getting girls like us. You understand? And he was always like, like in the movie Boomerang, where you got Eddie Murphy, who's the gallus, right? He's the stud. And then you got the other two friends who don't really get no pussy. Well, me and my friend was like two Eddie Murphys in Boomerang. And then we had the third friend who, he wasn't, I can't say he was getting no girls at all, but it weren't nowhere close to us. Do you understand what I'm saying? So for us to turn around and say your girl wants us and she came on to us, do you understand how that's gonna look? Do you know how that's gonna make him feel? So my way of looking at it was, you know what? This girl's obviously a hoe, and we need to catch her coming on to a next guy, and then we can tell him. Do you understand? Because if we tell him that she came on to us, he's gonna start treating us different. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was what it was. I know some people are gonna say, fucking hell, man, what kind of friend are you? You should have told him and this, that and the other, but it is what it is, man. It is what it is. Okay, Emmanuel says Joshua has a first fight refusal with the zone. If they can't match what another network is paying, he can fight off the zone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it could be AJ on Fox. AJ on Fox. Mm, could be. Afro Soul says Lewis just tweeted a video of going through different coaches at different stages in his career to prove that AJ needs to move on from his current coach. uh, Jose Marino says, Hatman, would you ever open up to a girl about your insecurities and your childhood? Um, I open up to anybody in my circle, a girl, whoever it is, about pretty much everything other than certain things I would keep to myself for strategic reasons, you know. But people who know me well know that I talk a lot about my life and my upbringing and what I'm thinking and what have you. If somebody knows me in real life, they know that they know a lot about me. Let's just put it that way. Including my girl. They know a lot. They know a lot. They don't know everything, but they know a lot. I'm not. There are certain people who never tell you anything about themselves. So you could know them for years, but you still don't really know them. But I'm not like that. So I tell my girl a lot about childhood and all kinds of shit. Because I'm not somebody who is too worried about insecurities that I've had and all that kind of business. I'm not someone that's really worried about all that. I'm a lot more objective about myself than many other people are. So Jose Marino said, Hatman, this may uh, sound ignorant, but I'm scared to marry into a Caribbean family. So am I. So am I. I'm scared to marry into a Caribbean family too. So yeah, I'm in the same boat. Ayed says, did you catch her with another dude? No, I didn't. Um, but I eventually lost touch with those two friends, so I don't know what transpired after that. Whether someone else did, I don't know. And to truth be told, I don't really care. you know, because them boys grew up the same way that I grew up in South London. They knew all the same things that I knew. They experienced the same things I experienced. They knew all the trampy, trashy, double crossing girls that I knew. So, they should know just as well as I know about women. Yeah. So if man got caught out, well, learn from it. You know what I mean? Like, learn to be more critical about the girl that you're with. BKNY says, have you ever visited the States? Yes. Yeah, I've been to New York and I've been to Miami. To be fair, I haven't spent much time in Miami. It was I've been there several times because I've had to change planes there to go to the Caribbean, and I've been to New York a couple times. Jose Marino says, Herman, what are the differences between Caribbean women and African women? Well, the Caribbean is a big place, but and there are many different cultures within the Caribbean, but in the British context, when people say Caribbean, they're mainly talking about people from Jamaica, Barbados, the small islands, um, and even within that, there are different cultures. But if we're talking in a generic sense, in a general sense, um, African women are just more traditional than Caribbean women. More traditional. Um, I wouldn't necessarily say more family orientated because Caribbean women are also very family orientated, but African women tend to be more traditional, more religious. They tend to drink less. They tend to be less abrasive. And I'm talking generally here. It's all relative because there are plenty of abrasive African women, but generally when you compare them to Caribbean women, they are more just more traditional. They believe in the traditional and natural gender roles more so than Caribbean women do. So that's why I say the difference is. Afro Soul says, when was the last time you were in New York? Last time I was in New York was probably Um, a long time ago, 15 years or something. It's a long time, maybe more. 15, 17 years or something. It's a very long time ago. It was in the early 2000s. Yeah, I went to New York in the late 90s, and then I went to New York again in the early 2000s. Emmanuel says, did Vitali ever spar AJ Fury and Wilder like Vlad did? I don't know actually. Um, I don't think Vitali ever sparred AJ, as far as I'm aware. I don't think either Klitschko has sparred Fury. And as far as Wilder, I don't know if I really don't know. Not that I've heard. That's all I can say. Not that I've heard. Ab says, would you ever go back to the US? I don't have any desire to go back. I wouldn't say I'd never go, but I don't have any desire to go. The US is really not my vibe at all. You know, it's not my vibe, man. US is like a big experiment, big social experiment. I guess everywhere is to some extent, but it's most obvious in the US. It's like a big petri dish where the social engineers get to, experiment on the guinea pigs. Jose Marino says, Hatman, where is Errol Spence Jr. gone on your Patreon? I don't know, man. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's left. I don't know. Hopefully he's good. Emmanuel says, wasn't Fury in Vlad's camp? Yeah, he wasn't. No, Fury. No, Fury was in Vlad's camp, but he never sparred him. He never sparred him. He was in the camp, but they never sparred together. I remember Fury talking about that because he was invited to Vlad's camp by Emmanuel Stewart because Stewart was training Andy Lee at the time, and Andy Lee is Fury's cousin. So he went to the camp and he saw Klitschko train and all that, but he never sparred Klitschko. BKNY says most punch-drunk boxer of all time. Boy, a lot of candidates, man. Meldrick Taylor's got to be up there. James Toney's got to be up there. They're real punch-drunk. Devon Sinclair says, if you could go back in history and visit any civilization or event, which one would it be and why? I'd like to visit Egypt, as most of us would, right? Ancient Egypt. So definitely the ancient Egypt. And probably the Mali Empire at its peak. The Mali Empire at its peak, because ancient Egypt is so mysterious, and the Mali Empire at its peak because um, that was the last time that black people had a civilization that was as advanced as, or more advanced, or as advanced and as rich as any other nation on earth, if not more so. Because the Mali Empire, of course, they had Mansa Musa, who they say was the richest man in history. I mean, I don't know how you could really know who the richest man in history was, but yeah, I'd like to see what it was like back then. Abs Boxing TV says, what is the one thing you really want to achieve in life before you die? One thing I really want to achieve in life. This might sound funny and a bit strange, but I'd like to have at least one more amateur fight. Yeah, I'd like to have one more amateur fight. Just one more. And other than that, I would like to retire. I'd like to find somewhere nice to retire, a nice country, and have a nice house by the beach. Yeah, and that's about it. And hopefully, have a positive influence on the people around me in my life and help them. Like if even if I don't have kids, any young person that I might mentor, or my nephews and nieces and stuff like that, I'd like to leave something for them, whether it's money, whether it's wisdom, whether it's my life's work, whatever. I'd like to lead them with something to help them on their journey. You know. Darrell Carter says, "What's the age limit for amateurs?" The age limit for amateurs is 40. So I gotta get a move on. If it don't happen in the next year, it ain't gonna happen because the age limit is 40. I'm not sure if it's like when you're 40, you can't compete after that, or for example, I don't know if you're allowed to be 40 or whether it's 39. I'm gonna say it's 40, so you can be up to 40 to compete as an amateur. Once you're over 40, so from 41 and above, you can't compete no more. So I've got like a year or something to have one more fight. Yeah. Ask Luis Ortiz. Yeah. See, the only way if I wanted to continue fighting would have to go pro, like Emmanuel saying, have one pro fight against the bum. Yeah, have a pro fight against the bum. Like Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke had a few pro fights, but most of them were fixed. You don't believe in Mickey Rourke fights, man. They're all fixed. Jose Mourinho says, Hatman, if you were an athlete and you wanted to be the center of attention, what route would you take? The bad guy role or the good guy role of Amir Khan? Um, I would probably take. Hmm. I wouldn't really think about it too tough, I don't know. I guess I would have to see the lay of the land. I would have to see the lay of the land, man, at the time. Because it might call for the bad guy role or it might call for the good guy role. It all depends. I'd be adaptable. Because like in pro wrestling, someone can turn from face to heel or from heel to face. So I'd see the lay of the land, see what my rivals were doing, and I would do whatever the situation called for. It might call for a heel or it might call for a face. Yeah. Big up Devon Sinclair. Big up, big up. Yeah, man. I try and have as positive effect as I can. You know. End of the day, my message is not a message of hate, but hopefully it's a message of uh I don't know even know if progress is the right word, but I just want people to suffer less, but be more sensible about how we get to that point of less suffering. Be enlightened and less of the suffering, man. Everyone says listening to your podcast makes me want to start a revolution and take down the deep state. Yeah, well, you're a young man. I used to feel like that once. Afro Soul says Kenny Porter said they signed their side to fight Spence a month ago and they haven't heard back from Spence's team. Okay, so there's rumors that there might be talks for Spence Crawford. Well, Bob Arum did say that he would be reaching out to Al Heyman with a view to making Spence Crawford. But the way Spence has been talking, he's been talking like a typical Al Heyman fighter. Where he's saying he got across the street and blah blah, all that Al Heyman talk, man. And look, I like Al Heyman. He's done a lot of good for boxing and he's treated fighters very well for the most part. But yeah, this whole cross the street bullshit, I don't like it, man. From a boxing fan perspective, I don't want to hear none of that. Keeping it all in house. Durrell Carter says, "Are there any new conspiracy theories that you've come across?" Yeah, I mean, they come out with new conspiracy theories like every week. Um, God, what are the conspiracy theories at the moment? The mud flood theory. That's the newest conspiracy theory I've heard of. The mud flood theory. They say that in recent history, like within the past 200 years, there was a giant mud flood that basically destroyed most of the world. And if you look at old photographs, you can see evidence for this mud flood. and that the civilization that existed before it was called the Tartarian civilization or something like that. So that's the newest conspiracy theory I've heard, the mud flood theory. Um, and of course, over the past couple years, there's been the Paul is dead theory, that Paul McCartney is an actor and that he's not the original Paul McCartney. But that one's actually been around since I think the 70s or 60s. But it's had a resurgence in the last couple years. So yeah, all the conspiracy theories, man. They come up with a new one every week. But the newest big conspiracy theory is the mud flood theory. Yeah, that's the newest big one. And before that was the flat Earth. Manuel says, Hatman, what do you think of people who say fighters can't be scared of each other? I think it's BS. Well, yeah, some fighters can be scared of each other. Yeah, they can. Some fighters can be, but usually a fighter is going to be scared of another fighter if they've got some previous history with that fighter, like if they've fought them in the amateurs or they've sparred with them. But if you're talking about two fighters who have never fought each other and they're both top level and they've both been in multiple world title fights, like AJ and Wilder, for example, do I think they're scared of each other? No, no, I don't think so. What reason would they be scared of each other? AJ had been in with loads of top fighters. Wilder had been in with Ortiz and who else? That's it, Ortiz and Fury, of course. Yeah. So I don't think they were scared of each other at all. So it depends on the situation. But are some fighters scared of other fighters? Yes. I mean, plenty of fighters were scared of Mike Tyson. I'm sure plenty of fighters were scared of Triple G when he was on his knockout streak. So, yeah, in fact, I'm going to end this live stream right here. Shout out to all you guys for rocking with me on this Friday night. I'm going to catch you guys on Tuesday, or catch you on the YouTube channel. Night, everybody. In fact, alright, let me just read this last comment from Jose Marino. It says, Hatman, if I could find out the truth to anything, mine would be, did OJ do it? Who committed 9/11? And what happened to Madeleine McCann? Well, did OJ do it? I'd be fucking amazed if he didn't. Who committed 9/11? Well, we might not know the exact people, but we know the general. Most of us who investigated know generally who did it. And what happened to Madeleine McCann? That is a genuine mystery. I got no idea. Was it the parents? Was it someone else? Why is the Madeleine McCann investigation still running? Apparently the police have just got new funding to continue investigating. Thousands of kids have gone missing since then, have never been found, but they don't get all this police money spend on finding them. But Madeleine still gets it all these years later. It's bizarre. Anyway, yeah, I'm out, people. Catch you guys on the next one. Laters.